It is 6:01 and we return from closed session. So thank you for joining us, and we'll go ahead and we will start this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'll join me, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And we will proceed to roll call, and we'll start with Vice President Mason.
Here.
Ms. Cound.
Here.
Ms. Mayo.
Here.
And Ms. Durkee.
Here.
All 5 board members are here. In closed session, so item 7.1, the board received information regarding negotiations from its representative employees, and that was regarding negotiations with CSEA, Medea, and CST. Item 7.2, the board voted 5-0 to readmit student 09-18 to regular schools in the Mount Diablo Unified School District. And I'll just take a moment to share the process that one of the biggest actions a board can take is to expel a student. And when we do take that action, we have a readmission plan. And so I think as a board, it's always nice to see the completion of a readmission plan and welcome someone back to the district. That's certainly a success that we're happy to see, and appreciate the efforts of our student services department and everyone else involved to help bring that student to successful completion of their plan. So nice to see that. And then item 7.3, public employee performance evaluation for the superintendent. And primarily what the board did was talk with the superintendent around what his goals will be. And we're looking forward to rolling those out in the next meeting or two to the public, as well as talking about the methodology for measuring those goals. So that was the conversation with the superintendent. And with that, we move along to public comment. Item 8.1. So the public may address the board regarding any item within the jurisdiction of the Board of Education of the Mount Diablo Unified School District that is not on this agenda. These presentations are limited to 3 minutes each, or a total of 30 minutes for all speakers, or the 3-minute limit may be shortened. If there are multiple speakers on any one subject, the public comment period may be moved to the end of the meeting. Speakers are not allowed to yield their time. And what we are attempting to do is streamline Zoom and learn and iterate. So I believe that we have allowed all of our speakers to enter. And Ms. Juranek, do we have a order or in which we're going to call on them?
Yes, I do have an order.
Okay, I'll defer to you then, and we can begin.
All right, Christy Palutson, if you would like to go ahead and unmute. Once you begin speaking, your 3 minutes will start.
Okay, if I can get a thumbs up if everybody can hear me. Excellent, thank you. Good evening, President Lawrence, members of the board, Dr. Clark, and staff. My name is Christy Palutzian, and I'm a proud parent of 2 8th grade students within our district and 1 college student at UC Berkeley who graduated from our district in 2019. The last time I spoke under public comment has been a while. It was January 8th, 2018, where the board unanimously voted on a cohort priority intended to fix our split feeder patterns, and it worked. Tonight, this item is being brought before you as an action item 18.2 AR 5116. And I urge the board to look closely at the proposal wording for each interdistrict priority as open enrollment begins later this week on October 15th. As a parent who's seen firsthand the success story of my oldest son being able to stay with his cohort, I would like for the cohort priority to continue as the board intended in fixing split feeder patterns. I do, however, have a concern about an added priority that's being proposed with a broadened definition and a higher priority than the cohort. It's priority, number 3, the broadened definition of the employee interdistrict transfer policy, and that is being broadened to include all district employees and their closest feeder pattern, excluding Monty Gardens, Sequoia, and Sequoia Middle because they have their own process, versus site employees. I'm worried that the increase in numbers to all district employees might jeopardize the cohort with a lower priority. While I do agree of the importance of teachers needing to have their children close to them at their job site, especially now, I might suggest that the employees' children follow the cohort priority and forego their own employee priority once a cohort can be established along the feeder patterns. Or perhaps a more specific definition of a cohort than what currently exists would assist. Once again, I want to thank the board for your time and consideration and keeping our split feeder patterns fixed. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. You may go ahead and excuse yourself from the meeting. And next we'll hear from Mina Lobo. If you would like to unmute yourself, your time will begin when you speak.
Hi, yes, my name is Maria Lobo. I'm a parent of 2 students at Bancroft Elementary, a 5th grader and a 3rd grader. Emailed earlier today again to, same as Christy, to express my voice and ask the board to please not do anything that might jeopardize the effectiveness of the cohort interdistrict transfer priority in tonight's vote. And thank you in advance for keeping our students together and fixing our district split feeder patterns. In our case, it's also important to consider that our students met their cohort at Bancroft and that they're currently missing each other terribly, and that they need their cohorts and they need to know that they can stay with them after this pandemic is over. I think they will do a lot better if they are together and when they start middle school and not having the anxiety of starting at a new school without them. So I also want to express my concern and urge the vote to please simplify that employee transfer priority, so not to create a ripple effect to the feeder patterns and their cohorts. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. You may go ahead and leave the meeting. Okay. And I'm sorry, I believe iPhone, I do apologize. I don't have a name listed for you. If you would like to unmute. Your name's coming across.
Yes, my name is Jenny Sang. My name is Jenny Sang. I'm speaking on behalf of over 200 parents and over 273 children tonight. Each parent has signed a petition with a list of demands. The names of each parent has been emailed to each of you. However, Mount Diablo has deleted the part of my email that lists the names of the 200 parents who supports a petition from the public record of tonight's meeting. I have resubmitted my email, but the public record only shows a partial list of 37 names. Moving on, the petition states the following. This is a petition from parents and caregivers of school-age children advocating the immediate return to in-person school for students in Mount Diablo Unified School District. On September 29, the County Health Office in Contra Costa County cleared the path for in-person learning to resume on October 13, tomorrow. With health metrics stabilizing and firm guidelines in place, the time is now to begin the road of recovery for our students and families. We ask that the leadership members of our district act now without delay and move forward with the hybrid learning plan. We recognize that some coordination time is necessary, but we reject the notion that more than a few weeks is needed to resume serving the needs of our children and the needs of parents who want to continue with distance learning. For over 90 school days, the students have been learning in solitude from bedrooms, kitchen tables, couches, cars, and related abnormal locations. As communities, we banded together and done everything asked by health officials in our district for 7 months. We have made innumerable sacrifices to the harm of our students and families. We sheltered in place to flatten the curve. We accepted distance learning as a temporary solution to combat an unimaginable situation. The situation has been difficult for parents and teachers alike, having to fulfill their obligations to work while simultaneously supporting the educational needs of our children. We recognize there's no perfect one-size-fits-all solution. We're not asking for perfection, but we desire a can-do attitude from teachers, from the district leaders and teachers, and not a defeatist one. Time has been lost due to a miscalculation and apathetic approach to return to in-person learning. The petition advocates for the immediate formation of task forces to provide assistance and the return the return of in-person learning. The hybrid model to commence no later than November 2, a written timeline roadmap towards a 5-day in-person education, weekly meetings to keep parents up to speed on the progress, and a public statement no later than October 23 on the details of your plan. Our children have no voice in all of this, but thousands of them are suffering with continued distance learning. I ask every parent and teacher who is listening tonight to please join us in giving our schools back to our children. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. You may now leave the meeting. Our next speaker, Gina Haynes, if you would like to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening,
Your 3
President
minutes will
Lawrence.
begin now.
Good evening, President Lawrence, members of the board, Dr. Clark, and staff. My name is Gina Haynes, and I'm the one that's been blowing up your email all afternoon.
Gina, I think we've lost your audio.
Can you hear me?
We can still hear her.
While we work on that, Gina, with your audio, let's move to another
We can hear
public
her.
comment.
We're able to hear Gina.
Yeah.
I see just as identifier UGRAMJU. If
I
you
think
would like
Laura
to
can't hear
unmute
us.
and
Ryan.
I think Laura can't hear us.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Gina, are you still on?
Yeah, should I
Okay.
continue?
Yes, please, Gina.
Gina, is your mic working now?
It's been working.
Yeah, we can hear her, Laura.
Can I continue?
Please.
All right, so I've been blowing up your phone all afternoon. This topic is very sensitive to me. The group Fix the Split spent 2 years working with the board, staff, joint meetings to really focus on split feeder patterns, how to make the corrections. My concern tonight is that the board policy that you have as existing looks nothing like what you approved on January 8th, 2018. All of the priorities for transfers have been taken out of the board policy and put in the AR, which makes me a little nervous that the board is the one that should be setting policies, but now all of a sudden it's pulled out of your hands. I want to make sure that the students in split feeder patterns still get some type of priority transfer. With what's being presented tonight, I can't say for sure if it is. It's very confusing, incorrect, and I'm just not sure how the employee transfers work. Now, I just want to bring up one example. Let's say, for instance, you're at Highlands. You teach at Highlands, and now your child is at Highlands. They go to transfer for middle school. Are they now still an employee transferring to the middle school, which let's say is Pine Hollow, I believe. So now they're at Pine Hollow. Where do they go after that? Because those students get a choice of any school in the district. Are they now get to select any school in the district? That's just one example. There's a lot of examples. There's a lot of like unanswered questions that we're just going to now leave up to staff to interpret. I think until you really work out all the bugs, until you get the board policy correct, I don't think you should move forward with this tonight. In fact, I recommended pulling it, but after speaking with Dr. Aguili, I hear that's not going to happen. And I just hope that you hear us tonight and you make sure that the split feeder pattern and the cohort transfer continues to be a priority for you. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Gina. It looks like Ms. Jernak might be having some audio difficulties, so I'm gonna step in here, and I believe the next person we had slated, we just see the username UGRAMJU, which I would ask if you could unmute yourself and also introduce yourself, please, and then go ahead, and from the time you start speaking, you'll have 3 minutes. We need you to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, my name is Juanita. I'm the parent of 2 kids in Mount Diablo, one special needs in Valley View and another one in Bancroft Elementary in the dual immersion program. And I'm here to advocate for the opening of schools, especially these 2 kids. They're regressing on their Spanish because it's, the dual immersion. And then my special needs kids, he's really struggling with the online learning. So I'm hopeful that you guys can come up with some timeline and let us know what, just more specifics around that area. Because I've been trying to follow, but I'm not hearing any specifics. So I'm just here to hopefully hear some good news, hopefully pretty soon. Thank you.
Thank you, and you can go ahead and exit from the meeting. I believe our next speaker is Nora Latore. Nora, if you'd like to begin, unmute yourself and begin, and then you'll have 3 minutes from the time you start speaking.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, my name is Nora Latore, and I'm the CEO of Eat Real, and I'm here tonight to celebrate and honor Mount Diablo Unified getting Eat Real certified, the first in California. And so I just want to share a little, yay! It's a huge accomplishment, and massive congratulations to so many people across the district and to the school board. I've met some of you who have been keeping close updates on the progress. And so I just want to share a little bit about Eat Real, the process quickly. 3 minutes, so I'm going to speak a little bit quickly.
Nora, just 1 second. If I can interrupt you, this is public comments. Are you here to do a public comment or are you here for an actual item?
I was here for item 10.7.
Oh, okay, so we're not there yet, okay?
Okay, so I have more than 3 minutes maybe?
You're going to have more than 3 minutes.
Wonderful. Okay, well, the public
we'll
comment
call
is
you later on, okay?
Mount Diablo is amazing to do this.
Yep.
So yeah, I can't wait to share in the update later. Sorry. Thank you.
We'll call you in a little bit.
Wonderful.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Clark. Thank you, Nora. We'll be back with you shortly. Ms. Jernak, do you have audio again, or would you like me to continue? Okay, I'm going to keep proceeding here. Maria Plowman, please.
Hi, this is Maria Plowman, and I wasn't sure exactly when to start speaking, but I just got hired to be
this is another one. We're all done with public comments.
Okay.
Sorry, Maria. We'll come back to you in a few minutes.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Okay, I think that wraps up public comments, President Lawrence.
Great, thank you. All right, and we'll move along here. We're going to move to item 9.0, which is district organization. So at regular board meetings, a single spokesperson of each recognized district organization may make a brief presentation. Items are limited to those which are informational. So I don't believe that we have any of those this evening. I'll pause for a moment.
You are correct. There is none.
Wonderful, thank you. So we'll move along to 10.0, recognitions and resolutions. And the first one is 10.1, review and potential approval of resolution number 2021-24, proclaiming October 23rd through October 31st, 2020 as Red Ribbon Week. Dr. Clark?
Yes, so thank you so much for that. So as we do with all of our resolutions, I usually read the introduction paragraph and then finish it off with the last paragraph. And so this week, I'm glad to present a resolution for Red Ribbon Week. Whereas alcohol and other drug abuse in this nation has reached epidemic stages. So whereas, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Mount Diablo School District declares October 23rd to the 31st as Red Ribbon Week and encourages its staff and students to participate in drug prevention education activities, making a visible statement that we are strongly committed to a drug-free community. So with that, I would like to leave it in the hands of the board.
I would make a motion that we approve resolution 20/21-24, proclaiming October 23rd through the 31st, 2020 as Red Ribbon Week.
Second.
Sorry, motion Ms. Mason, second by Ms. Mayo. Ms. Mayo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Count?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. Thank you, everyone. We move to 10.2, review and potential approval of resolution 2021-25, proclaiming, recognizing October 11th through 17th as California Week of the School Administrator. Dr. Clark, over to you.
Thank you so much. So following that same format, I would just like to present, whereas approximately 15,000 certificated and classified school administrators are employed in public schools of the state of California. And whereas Mount Diablo Unified School District administrators have been tackling a significant number of new challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic and have gone above and beyond to lead and ensure that staff, students, and families are provided the best possible services and environments to be successful during these unprecedented times. So I now leave it in the hands of the board.
So, Mr. President, if I may, having been one at one time, I'd like to move to approve Resolution 20/21-25, recognizing October 11th through the 17th, 2020 as California Week of the School Administrator.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Motion from Ms. Durkee, second by Ms. Mayo. Ms. Mayo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Count?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
I vote yes. Item passes 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Durkee, for your past service, and thank you to all our current administrators for the work that they do in support of our students. Item 10.3, review and potential approval of resolution 2021-26 in recognition of School National Lunch Week. Dr. Clark.
Yes, so again, let me see here. So a resolution celebrating National School Lunch Week, whereas in 1946, then President Harry Truman signed the National School Lunch Act. The National School Lunch Program is now the largest federal child nutrition program. And let me skip down here to the bottom. And approximately 30% of Mount Diablo Unified School District students qualify for free and reduced meals through the National School Lunch Program. So I now leave it in the hands of the board.
Thank
I would
you.
move that we approve resolution 20/21-26 in recognition of National School Lunch Week.
Second.
Motion from Ms. Mason, second Ms. Count. Ms. Count, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. I think we know that hungry students don't learn, and so now more than ever, this is a really important program, and appreciate the work in recognizing all the folks who are working to provide school lunches to our students. And so we move to 10.4, Resolution 2021-29 in recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day. Dr. Clark.
Yes, so we have another resolution here. And so whereas the Mount Diablo Unified School District Governing Board in this year, 2020, for the first time in its history, seeks to formally recognize Indigenous Peoples Day, being motivated by a continuously developing value for cultural appreciation and being motivated to give due respect, acknowledgement, and honor. So I would highly recommend for those of you who have some time to go and read the entire resolution. It is a little lengthy compared to our others. However, I will finish it off by saying, so now therefore, Gavin Newsom, our governor, do hereby proclaim October 14th, 2019 as Indigenous Peoples Day. So that was the first one. And so now, therefore, the governing board of the Mount Diablo Unified School District fully endorses the significance of meaning of this proclamation, hereby recognizes October 12th, 2020 as Indigenous Peoples Day. I now leave it in the hands of the board.
Thank you, Dr. Clark.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the formal recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day with Resolution 2021-29.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Town, for the motion. Ms. Mason for the second. Ms. Mason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
I vote yes. Item passes 5-0. And then we move along to item 10.5, a very exciting one. Presentation, discussion, and possible action of the finalists for student board member for the 2020-21 school year. Dr. Clark.
Yes, so I believe that we have two potential student representatives on the call here. We have Michelle and we have Asira. And I know she's here. I'm going to wait for her to pop on. Here she is. Hello there. How are you?
Good. How are you?
We're doing great. So just to share a little background information with the board and with those of you who are watching at home. This year, the Mount Diablo Unified School District Governing Board is going to be welcoming, for the first time ever, a student representative. And we put out the application process to all of our high school, I believe, juniors and seniors, and they went through a rigorous application process. We came down to 8 finalists, and they had to produce a letter of recommendation from a staff member. They also had to respond to some written prompts, and we then, as a cabinet here at the district office, we then read each and every one of those prompts, and we identified 2 finalists that we have here in front of the board this evening. And last Friday, we sent an email to these 2 young students, and we gave them 2 questions to respond to, and we're going to give them each 1 minute to respond to each question. And so we'll do question 1, and we'll go to Michelle, and then we'll go to Asira, and then we'll give them each a minute, and then we'll go to question 2, and we'll follow that same guidelines. And I picked the order because of the last names, and I'm just going in alphabetical order. But if everyone's okay with that, are you students okay with that? Or thumbs up? All right, great. So I will, let me just read the 2 questions for our audience, and then I'll come back and I'll formally call on you, okay? So the 2 questions that they're going to respond to this evening are, what strategies would you use to encourage students to participate in shaping their school's culture and climate? So that's question number 1. And then number 2 is, what steps should school site administrators and staff use to communicate academic and behavioral expectations? So with that said, I am going to ask Michelle to unmute herself. And I'm going to, first of all, President Lawrence, would you like to say anything to these young students, or would you like to introduce the governing board so they know who it is that they're speaking to?
Certainly. So first of all, I mean, I think the work and effort that went in on all of the students was great to see, and lots of strong candidates, but a special recognition for the two of you against some very heavy competition. It says a great deal, and we appreciate your participation here. So I'm Brian Lawrence, I'm president of the school board, and how about we'll go next to our vice president, and I'll have her introduce herself, and then perhaps she can point to the next board member to introduce themselves. So Vice President Mason.
Hello, welcome. I'm Deborah Mason, Vice President of the board at this time, and I will pass off to Linda Mayo.
Ms. Mayo, you're on mute.
Naturally. Good evening. I'm Linda Mayo, and I'm one of the 5 trustees elected to serve on the Mount Diablo School District. Mrs. Durkee.
That was a fast handoff. Hi, congratulations, first of all, for getting to this point. It's very, very impressive. So you should feel really good about that. I'm Joanne Durkee. I'm a board member. And I pass it off to Ms. Count.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Cherise Count, Mount Diablo School Board member, and just really excited to have you both with us tonight and to get a chance to hear from you. Thanks.
So our, make sure I'm not muted. So our first student to speak is going to be Michelle. And Michelle, I'm going to pose the question to you, and then I'm going to start I'm going to start on my phone the minute stopwatch. And when you come to 50 seconds, I'll raise my hand, and that will let you know that you have 10 seconds remaining. Okay. So Michelle, will you take yourself off mute? All right. So question number 1. What strategies would you use to encourage students to participate in shaping their school's culture and climate?
All righty. Thank you so much for that question. Thank you so much, everybody, for giving us the opportunity to come and speak to you today. When I first petitioned for this position over the summer, I really saw it as an avenue for students to take autonomy over their own learning and over their own education. The student board member is going to represent thousands of students throughout the Mount Diablo Unified School District. So ensuring that they are able to accurately voice the concerns of students is of the utmost importance. And a strategy that I've seen so that students are encouraged to participate in the forming of their own culture and climate in Sacramento City Unified was inter-district student town halls, where students could talk with students from other high schools. There are divides. There are certain, I would say, socioeconomic divides that often divide students in the different high schools. And these student town halls would give student leaders, and anybody can be a student leader, the opportunity to talk to their student board member, to talk to other students in other schools, including Olympic and other alternative high schools, and give them the opportunity to say whatever it is that they're concerned about. And it allows for... Oh.
Yep, thank you so much.
A minute goes so fast.
So a minute is not a lot of time. So just so thank you for that response. So now, Masira, will you unmute yourself just so we don't lose any time there? And I'll read the question one more time. So can you please tell us what strategies would you use to encourage students to participate in shaping their school's culture and climate? You may now begin.
Okay, no, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, so I'm going to start. So I plan to encourage students to participate in shaping school culture and climate by using social media to communicate. I believe that social media is at a huge advantage to us since we are all at home right now and we can all reach so many different people all at the same time in their comfort of their own home. Encouraging students to engage in an account that is ran by one of us, I feel will make them feel more comfortable. They'll be able to express their concerns, give us feedbacks and everything to us, so it's not like to you guys and they feel like they have to limit themselves. I feel like listening to the recommendations and acting and making decisions off of them will make people's attitudes and perspectives on school differently. We could do a lot of things on social media, such as polls, games, and just listening to comments. I know that right now is unmotivated, and we can help them by giving them a push by doing games and giving them prizes. And we can also do competitions. And social media is helpful during this time, but it could be just as useful during normal times as well. That's all I had to say.
Perfect. Thank
Great,
you.
thank you. Okay, so this is the last question, and so again, I just want you guys to take your time and talk. But so what steps? This is for Michelle. If you'll unmute yourself, then what steps should school site administrators and staff use to communicate academic and behavioral expectations? You may now begin.
Alrighty, thank you so much. When I first read this question, what I thought about was a mutual understanding between students and educators. So in order for staff and faculty to effectively communicate what they expect of students, students also need to be able to effectively communicate what they expect of their learning and what they expect of their teachers. So when I read this question, I thought, what if we have some sort of forum survey type of situation where we can ask students, hey, what are you expecting of teachers? And then teachers, what are you expecting of students? And create a guiding philosophy for every single school, guiding objectives that every school can then post on their website publicly. Students create it themselves, teachers create it themselves. There's a mutual understanding of what each is expecting of each other, and then also what we're expecting of our peers. It needs to be a tandem relationship, and as a result, students will be more likely to hopefully follow these academic and behavioral expectations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, now over to Asira. And if you'll unmute yourself, perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you the same question is, what steps should school site administrators and staff use to communicate academic and behavioral expectations? You may begin.
Okay, so steps that I think that school site administrations and staff should use to communicate behavioral expectations are by using reward systems such as Hero. At Inicio Valley, we use the Hero system, and it did start off a little slow, but I think throughout it, people started listening about the prizes and the consequences that came with it, and people wanted to engage more, and they wanted to get the points, and they wanted to get the prizes, and you get them with good behavior. We could use something like this just as a start, and eventually we can make it something big and carry it along throughout the years. I feel like once a group of people started, maybe I'll start it with the other people that are interested. Other people will start to follow along, and they're like, oh, this is kind of fun. Like, we should all just do this. And I think this is a good thing to do at any age because it's competitive and you want to do better to get better prizes. And I also think that once it like blows off, people won't think like, it'll be more of a thing that's just like, why aren't you doing it, other than why are you doing this? And I just think it'll be a good place to start overall.
Thank you. So I do want everyone to know that that both of these students submitted a very lengthy and in-depth application. So I know that this is, this is to have a minute to give a response to a very complex question is tough. So I do want to acknowledge that is a tough task, but we did not want to have you guys sit here and for 20-30 minutes answer a bunch of random questions. So we really tried to narrow it down. But fortunately and unfortunately, we can only choose one, and so that is why that's why the board is elected. And that's why there's 5 board members, so that we can have ties. And so anyway, just regardless, that I'm just so thrilled that you two have risen to the top of this process. And however this works out, for whoever is not chosen, there are opportunities that for you to get involved and for you to still take a leadership role in the district that I will be reaching out to you personally about. So with that said, I will turn it over to President Lawrence, if you would like to guide the next step.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. And to Michelle and Asira, I think you've both done a fantastic job of representing your school, your family, your community, and you both have a great deal to be proud of, and we're certainly proud of you. So as Dr. Clark said, this is why we have elections, and I will compliment both of you. It's so nice to hear two candidates for a position speaking and not interrupting and yelling over each other. So it was delightful to hear such articulate answers and such great perspectives. So what I would propose, and this will be difficult, but how we do like our board presidency is that a board member may nominate someone, and then we would vote on that person. So effectively, if someone proposes someone as a candidate, if that person receives 3 yes votes, then they would be selected as the person. So I think I would propose that to the board, that I would look to a board member to nominate one of the 2 candidates, and then we would vote yes or no on that candidate. If they did not have 3 yeses, then presumably we would go to the other candidate and someone would nominate them, and we would vote on that person. And so we would vote until we had a candidate who had 3 or more yes votes. That would be my proposal on how we would handle this. Is there, does that please the board? Is there a suggestion to do it a different way, or does that work for the board? I'm hearing no objection from the board. So I then leave it to a brave board member to go ahead and select from one of these 2 worthy candidates to bring them forward as the nominee for the position.
I'll be brave. First off, you're both fabulous, and we just have to make a decision, just like, so nope, don't take anything personal. We love you both. But I would nominate Asira to be the board member.
Okay. Thank you. And I think what we'll go ahead and do is we will go ahead and simply move through. I'll poll each of the 5 board members. So Ms. Mason, I'll go ahead and start with you. A yes or no vote?
Yes.
Asira as the nominee. Okay.
So I'm sorry, we don't need a second run this process.
I was going to say, I think.
Okay,
Yeah, I was
just
just
clear.
going to do this. Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Mr. As long as that pleases the board, I think we would just move forward with the vote. So I'll go ahead, Ms. Count.
I'm sorry, I was confused by the process. I was waiting for a second.
Yeah.
This is really hard because you're both so amazing. Oh my gosh.
Do we want to do a second, do you think?
I'm happy
That's our normal.
Yeah.
No,
I think
we
that-
don't. When we're doing officers of the board, and it's not, a second is not
It's not-
required. You make a motion and then
Okay,
you vote.
okay.
Like Brian said, if
Okay.
there's not a majority, then you go, but it's up to you guys. I'm just saying that's the way we do
Okay,
it.
that makes sense. Okay, I'm good. Okay, so we're back to Ms. Count.
Okay.
Okay, so are we to me? Oh my gosh. Well, you sure we can't pick 2? Darn it. I think I'm gonna vote no in this case, unfortunately.
Ms. Mayo.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Durkee.
Oh, goodness.
So at this point, we have 2 yes votes and 1 no vote.
I feel like I'm on The Voice or whatever. It's like, I'm going to say no as well.
Okay. I am also going to say no. And so I would look, that fails on a vote of 2 to 3. And so I would look for a second motion.
I would like to nominate Michelle Alas.
Okay, and so we'll go ahead and we'll start the voting there. So Ms. Count,
Yes.
Ms. Durkee,
Yes.
Ms. Mayo,
Yes.
Ms. Mason.
I'm going to stick with no for Asira.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and vote yes. So the motion is going to pass 4 to 1. So congratulations to Michelle and Asira. Congratulations to you on such a strong candidacy and strong presentation. And thank you on behalf of our entire board and school district. And as Dr. Clark said, he'll be reaching out to you personally for additional ways to serve. So thank you so much, Asira.
Thank you.
And thank you both. And please don't take that as any kind of a rejection. We did have to pick one. And as Dr. Clark said, we hope that you continue to take a leadership role in the district. We've been very, very impressed by you both. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you.
And as I said, I will be in contact with both of you to let you know next steps. So again, thank you so much for your candidacy and coming forward for this very crucial position. So thank you both.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
All
And
right.
we'll see you at a future board meeting as well. We look forward to that at the next one. Great.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. With that, we move along. Nora, this is going to be your chance in just a moment. We move on to item 10.7, which, man, tough act to follow after two fantastic student candidates for the student board member. But we move along to some other great news, which is item 10.7. Recognition and awarding of the Eat Real certification for the MDUSD Food and Nutrition Services Department. And so, Dr. Clark, I send it to you first.
Well, I mean,
Dr. Clark, we lost your audio.
yes, that was it. Technical difficulty.
Okay.
No, but you know, I cannot, you know, I just cannot say enough about, you know, the work that is being done, you know, in our food service department. Obviously, I've only been here, you know, right around 100 days, but you know, we're in the midst of a global pandemic, and I know that our goal at this point is to, you know, feed all young people under the age of 18 who need it, and we are clearly doing that, and we're doing that quite well. However, there's also the food nutrition program as a whole, and as a whole, it is run in a way that meets all of the guidelines set out by those who set those guidelines. And so, so I'm not quite sure who I'm going to kick it to, if I'm going to kick this over to Dominic or if I'm going to kick it over to Nora. I think, Dominic, if you'll help me on this.
I will. Yes, sir, I will. I think
Thank
we're going to give that over to Nora first, and then I think maybe I can say a couple words after.
Well, I don't know. Nora is pretty excited.
Yeah,
and
she's
she
pretty
has that-
excited.
She has that grin on her face. So I don't know, you know, I don't know what else you can say after she goes. But Nora, let's turn it over to you.
And
you,
Nora,
Dr. Clark. And a happy National School Lunch Week and happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And it's a real honor to be here, and congratulations to the two students who just presented as well. So now I'll really go this time.
and Nora, you have more than 3 minutes. So
okay, wonderful. So I won't speak too quickly, but I'll move quickly. Wonderful. So my name again is Nora Latore, and I'm the CEO of a local Bay Area nonprofit. It's a national nonprofit called Eat Real, and eatreal.org if anyone's curious. And so we are a national public health nonprofit that is all about increasing real food access for children and real food knowledge to improve the health of the next generation and the planet. And we really believe that through food transformation, we can do just that, create a healthier next generation and a healthier planet and better educational outcomes. And so today I'm here to announce that Mount Diablo Unified School District, after a very rigorous process, and I'll explain more about it, is achieving Eat Real certification, the first in California, and is truly trailblazing for the nation. So I'm going to explain a little bit about why we do what we do in our program and our work with certifying at Mount Diablo over the last 2 years, really digging in with Mount Diablo Unified and Dominic leadership. And then I'm going to explain a little bit about the process, who was all involved, because there were so many hands on deck and so many people on this call that were involved. And then I'm officially going to give the certificate to Dominic in honor of his extreme leadership and incredible leadership. So, and to all of you for your vision as well. So a little bit about what you hear. Dr. Clark, you just mentioned about how we're in a global health pandemic, the biggest health pandemic in facing our society. And it's and it's truly, when we just actually launched a public health alert about this with some of our chief science officer and our advisory board. And truly, this health pandemic, COVID-19, we're at higher risk for COVID-19 complications and death and problems because we have such processed food related disease in America and a processed food culture. And that truly, our lifespans and health spans have been at risk, and now they're even at more risk because of COVID. And underneath that is the food that we have access to and that we consume. And so really our nonprofit is all about increasing that real food access so that people can live healthier lives, and especially children. And so we know, and I know what I've heard Dominic say is that, you know, you want to get your kids back healthy as soon as you can, and you want to support their health during COVID-19 and beyond and their educational performance. And that's what our partnership is all about doing. It's all about transforming your food at school so that every kid that needs it can have the healthy food that they need in order to help them thrive. And so we are just really grateful that you take a whole child approach, and that really your school district sees that by investing in real food at school, you're helping fuel each student's development, their focus, their academic excellence, their athletic ability, their health, their behavior, and beyond, and their health spans and their lifespans. And you're doing that by offering real, healthy, nutritious food and delicious food at school. And so it's a big deal. I think sometimes we think of nutrition as separate, but I've been really inspired by how Mount Diablo Unified integrates nutrition and education in multiple ways. And so, like I said, it's the first in California to receive the certification, and is really making way for other school districts across California. More have signed on because of your leadership, and in California and across the nation. And I just want to explain a little bit about the process. So the process was, again, over 2 years, and it was extremely integrative and collaborative. And so actually it started with the Real Food in Schools Collaborative, which included Life Lab. So Tamara Helfer, her amazing work on the ground supporting education programs, as well as, I don't know if Jennifer Sachs is on the call, but your incredible Chief of Educational Services, who really was the bridge between nutrition and garden programs. We had a three-pronged approach where we helped Dominic transform the food in the cafeteria. You made the school gardens learning centers as well in classrooms. So the lunchroom became a classroom, the garden became a classroom, and then there was also nutrition education happening in the classroom. So you really took a multi-pronged approach. And actually Nick Anisich of the California government program said that it was the most integrative model that he's seen after visiting 150 other models across the state. So you should be proud. And huge props to the leaders across those different categories. And I know I want to also commend the school board, because you have been checking in on the process and getting updates and being very passionate about it as well. And then the other pieces, I would say that Dominic Maki, and as well as your entire staff, have been very involved, trainings, curious. They've themselves been ambassadors for this work to really make it come alive in that classroom that is the lunchroom. And so we went through and we actually assessed Mount Diablo against science-based standards that define nutrition and sustainability, gave a score, and then helped Dominic and partnered with him, and he led the way then on upping that score over 2 years and transforming all the food so that then could receive the Eat Real certification. And so some examples of and I personally witnessed him. What was really cool was, like, one example of that was, in order to achieve the certification, he challenged 20 vendors, some local, some national, to offer higher quality, more delicious, more nutritious options to Mount Diablo. And now those same vendors are offering better options across the state and across the country. So we actually is changing our food system. And so Mount Diablo is changing our food system, not just for your students, but for other students as well. And so some examples of how your students have benefited from this process that you've gone through. This is shocking to me, but you've actually removed over 10 pounds of sugar per student per year. just gonna let that sit in for a little bit. That is a lot of sugar per student that you've taken out of their diets, and then they're able to focus more, their immune systems get boosted quickly. Kids' metabolic health can improve, a child's metabolic health can improve within 10 days of reducing added sugar. So you're helping them be more resilient against things like COVID really quickly. And that was by moving from orange juice to fresh cut delicious oranges, and moving away from highly flavored sugary yogurt to amazing yogurt with fresh fruit in it instead. That was also appetizing. So some really powerful moves like that to increase the health without compromising the quality or the tastiness of your food. Also increasing the quality, really removing harmful ingredients that no child or parent wants in their food. And we have a list of harmful ingredients, and Dominic was real passionate about getting that out of the food by your vendors. And then you added seasonal fruits, seasonal vegetables. That's local. That means it's the highest quality, the most nutrient dense. You also added in plant-based options. Dominic actually created a new industry term called Planet Cuisine, which is new plant-based options, and the students were loving them. I was on site earlier at the beginning of this year, and the students were loving the Planet burritos, and it just gave them another option for something that they wanted. And it was really cool to watch them enjoy that new item, and that was better for them and better for the planet as well. And then you also have been doing so much to educate. So not only making these foods available to the students and giving them the options so they can choose options like this, but also educating them on the why. So that's a little bit, those are just some sneak peeks. This is a huge process. And so that's just the beginning of our partnership, and it's taken over 2 years. And now we're really excited to keep raising the bar. I know that you all have big visions to continue and to make changes and to engage parents and students in these changes. I know that with the coming warehouse, it's really going to allow you to transform even more how you source and how you make the best products available to your students. And so we actually plan to continue to partner in certification and help through the process and stand side by side as you make more changes and more improvements to the food. So with that, I hope that gives a little glimpse of why this is so important to our children's health, to their immediate health, and to their long-term health. And Dominic is holding up the certificate, the official certificate that we delivered to him today, and I believe you have a copy as well. And this is your official Eat Real certification. So congratulations from our entire team, our board of directors, our philanthropic leadership board, and our entire Eat Real community, which includes Top Chefs and beyond. So we're just so proud of your work, your leadership in your district, in the state, and across the nation. And we really hope this has a ripple effect that educates and inspires your students, your schools, and your communities. And we believe that you're creating a healthier tomorrow today. So congratulations again. Huge, massive thanks, Dominic. You're shaping our program. You've helped me as a leader. And this is happening because of you. And so thank you. And thank you to the entire board for your belief in this and your passion for Eat Real certification and this partnership.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you so much, Nora. Dominic, would you like to say a few words as well?
Yeah, I'll say a couple short words. First of all, I'd like to thank the Board of Trustees who really brought me home 3 years ago to have me serve my community. And that was so important to me. And to now be able to go through this journey, and I'd like to thank really, not only the leadership of Dr. Clark, who's just come on board with us recently, Dr. Gonzalez and the rest of the executive cabinet, especially Jennifer Sachs, who was from day one, a part of this process. Really what we really need to thank as well is the Battery Power Club of San Francisco, because they provided this grant that gave us the opportunity for us to actually partner with Eat Real and to come together and develop this standard that we really, in the beginning, to be quite frank, we really didn't have a matrix or some kind of a standard set, but now Eat Real, working with my department, has now set a standard for Mount Diablo Unified School District, not only today, but moving forward for the future. And so it took a lot of work. And I'd like to thank all of the Eat Real team, especially Nora and Beth and Jennifer and Kristen and Larry, who was the CEO previously, and especially Nora, who took the time to fly out to St. Louis with me and wanted to see school food service firsthand. And we walked the floor of the School Nutrition National Convention and actually visited close to 30 manufacturers and really interviewed those manufacturers of the ingredients that were in the products that they were serving school children. And we learned a lot from that day. And we learned a lot that there was an opportunity that we could be successful. And we also learned a lot of things about what food manufacturers put in their ingredient list and what is true and sometimes what is not true. And so that was quite an education for me. But the one biggest thing that I really needed, lastly, a couple shout outs. My area supervisors, Paula Onofrio, Thomas Egan III, and Deanna Robles Davis, my administrative secretary, Angie Vickroy, and Deborah Waters, Lakshmi Garam, and Gina Ramirez in my central office, all the men and women of the Food and Nutrition Services Department. This was a team effort. And they did not buy off on this program right off the bat, but we did convince them and they did see the light. And when they did, that's what we're doing now. We're doing 90% scratch-made food in the middle of a COVID pandemic. It is pretty incredible what we're doing. And so I can't thank my team enough for believing in this and your belief in not only me and my department that we actually could make this happen. And that's something that we decided 2.5 years ago, and we all said, okay, let's approve this battery power grant. Let's see how we can make this work. So this is really I want to say a win. It is 3 years ago, we know we wanted a transformation of the Food and Nutrition Services Department, and here we are today. And we are not done. We are not finished. We are going to be very humbled by this, and we're going to continue to do our work. But that decision we made 2.5 years ago, this is the payoff. And I think this is something that we will continue to learn from and continue to strive and work hard. And I know we talk about the warehouse because that's the game changer that's coming down the pipeline as we complete that project after another almost 2.5 years. And then lastly, I think Cisco San Francisco is our distributor. I have to show a respect and appreciation to them because they brought in every product that we asked. And that's not very common for a distributor to do that, but that shows you the commitment, especially Michael Pucci, who was our sales marketing associate, our sales representative, who worked with their office and brought in every product that we asked to meet the new standard. And so now really everybody in the state of California, all the manufacturers, not only state of California, but nationally, know that Mount Diablo Unified School District has a standard, and we're not going to purchase their product unless it meets our standard. And so our standard is what's best for our students and what's best for our kids and our community. As I've always said, the school district is the core of our community. And so we need to make sure that we nurture that community as best we can. So Nora, I know I've taken up a lot of time, but Nora, I want to say thank you very much. And again, to all of you, the Board of Trustees, for your support. I cannot appreciate it enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you. Board members, any comments or feedback or questions?
I would just say I knew when we brought on another Italian to handle the food that we would be okay.
I just want to say thank you. We've been following this, like you said, for a long time. And, I'm now back in the world of trying to figure out how to get a young child to eat healthy. So I'm listening carefully. And, it's a really inspiration. So thank you for both of you.
Yes, ditto. As a board member watching you through this process, I've been very, very impressed. And as a parent, I thank you as well for not only my own kids, but all the kids in our district who are benefiting from this every day. It's exactly what we need to be doing, and it's great to see us on the forefront.
And so Nora, thank you so much for all of your support and all of your efforts on behalf of our board and our district. And Dominic, I'll just take a moment to say, I remember 3 years ago when Cindy Gershon came to me and said, I found our next head of food services. He's going to be amazing. And, once you're introduced to Dr. Meyer and her strong support for everything that I think she was there at the time you started this, all the way through now to Dr. Clark, who I know is such a large proponent of what we're doing, and Dr. Gonzalez, Ms. Sachs, all the many, many people in your department that you listed. And I think it just comes down to the fact that when we talk about the health and well-being of our children, that so much of it starts with the food that we serve them. And when you talk about that we've decreased by 10 pounds per student the amount of sugar, the fact that they're not eating food with ingredients that we can't understand or can't pronounce, that we are actually serving real food to our children. And not only are we serving it to them, they understand why we're serving it. They're excited, they're learning about it, and they're learning to love it. It's not just simply, hey, this is good for you, but to your point of it being made from scratch. And I think just it is such, with so much admiration and excitement that I see the transformation that's happened over the last 3 years. But to your point, knowing that there is still more to come, and that we've embraced recognizing, one, the huge number of children who right now that we are literally their lifeline, that they're counting on us, their families are counting on us for meals, and the fact that we've also continued to expand the type of students that we can serve, and with the different offerings. And I think it's just a tremendous accomplishment for everyone in the food services department, and we're very proud and very grateful to you. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Wonderful. So with that, we're going to move along to our public employee appointment, which I was somewhat premature in and tried to move up on the agenda, but we moved to the review and potential approval of personnel appointment vice principal over at Ignacio Valley High School. Dr. Clark.
Yep. So I'm going to turn this over to our Human Resources Director, Dr. Scudero, to introduce our potential candidate here.
So the Mount Diablo Unified School District is pleased to bring for your review and potential approval Maria Plowman as the new vice principal at Ignacio Valley High School. Maria has her administrative credential, a Master of Arts in Education with a concentration in special education, as well as an education specialist teaching credential. She has 12 years of experience teaching students from ages 5 to 22 with varying disabilities and who are from ethnic and culturally diverse backgrounds. Maria has many years of experience in counseling, training, coaching, and supporting students, parents, and service providers in a collaborative effort to ensure successful learning outcomes in an educational environment. Maria's experience as a strong leader has included being able to coordinate curricular resources, participate in staff development, and the innovation of special methods and approaches to alternative learning programs, which includes virtual learning. Maria is looking forward to joining Mount Diablo Unified School District and serving at Ignacio Valley High School.
Great, thank you for that. With that, I look to the board for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the approval of Maria Plowman for her appointment as vice principal at Ignacio Valley High School.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Ms. Durkee, second by Ms. Mason. Ms. Mason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Cowan?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Maria, congratulations. We're delighted to have you as a new vice principal at Ignacio Valley High School. Would you like to introduce yourself and say a few words, and if there's anyone you would like to thank?
Hello, Dr. Clark and Board of Trustees. Thank you for having me on here. I'm so excited to be a part of your school district. I want to thank you all again for having me be here. I live in the Vacaville area. I have family members in the San Ramon area, Walnut Creek area. So I'm really excited to be part of the community and just be in this transition right now. We are in such, as you said, unprecedented times, and I'm excited to use my expertise as well as professionalism to be a part of this district. So thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you and welcome. All right. So from there, we move along to item 12.1, review the request to increase and decrease full-time equivalent of certificated personnel for the 2020-21 school year. Dr. Clark?
Yes, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Rubio.
Good evening, everyone. The first item is for your review regarding the increase and decrease to the full-time equivalent changes that we have for staff.
Any questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, we'll move along to 12.2, which is review and potential. Oh, and I'm sorry, yes, that was info. And then 12.2 is review and potential approval of the request to increase and decrease full-time equivalent for classified personnel, which is also for information. So Dr. Rubio?
Dr.
Yes.
Rubio.
Thank you. Good evening again. And again, this is for classified personnel for your review for the increase and decrease of the full-time equivalents. I'm noticing we're using some of the previous language, so we'll get that corrected in the next board meeting. But these are also for your review.
I do have a question on this one.
Yes.
At Ignacio Valley, are we dividing one position into three positions? What's going on with that? There's three, and it looks like there's a change in the hours or something.
Yes. So in order to, sometimes as a result of the transfer process that our employees go through when one position is being eliminated at one site and having to go to another site, we have to make sure that the FTE is a match for what that employee in terms of what their hours they're entitled to. So that school had a larger FTE sitting vacant. And so in order to make that match, so to speak, we had to go ahead and the school site sent in a request, or we generated the request to go ahead and alter the amount of FTE they had in order to accommodate that employee coming in.
Okay, so this person's coming to Ignacio Valley High School, and where they came from, they had more hours, so they had to make an adjustment to match it here.
Close.
Right?
They had just a little bit less. Just a little bit less.
Oh, less. Okay.
Yeah. So in order to make that adjustment, the school site later in several months decides to increase it up again, then they can do that. But in order to make the initial transfer, it is required to be a match.
Thank you.
Sure.
So just to confirm, our role for these two items is just to review, because one of them does say approve.
Yes, and I apologize. I just noticed, we're still transitioning to these as informational items. So I just emailed my staff tonight because I caught the same to make sure that they correct the language. And so we'll get that fixed starting in the next board meeting. My apologies.
Thank you for the clarification. Other questions, board members, or comments? Okay, thank you, Dr. Rubio. Hearing no other questions or comments, we're going to move along to board member reports, and we'll go ahead and start with Ms. Mayo.
Thank you, President Loris. I wanted to share that on September 30th, I participated as a viewer for the Budget Advisory Committee meeting, and I want to commend Mrs. Gonzalez for a review of the budget process, which was very well received by the participants of the Budget Advisory Committee. On October 1st and on October 5th, I participated in two County School Board Association meetings. The first was Contra Costa County, and then on October 6th, October 8th, I apologize, I've mixed up my dates, was the Alameda County School Board Association meeting, and their discussion at that particular meeting was reopening in the schools. I'm sure Mrs. Cound will talk about the October 1st one. On October 5th, along with three others, I believe, I attended the Mount Diablo Business Education Alliance meeting, and we broke into discussion groups, and I was in the facilities construction side, or construction CTE programs, so that was a nice change for me. I got to talk about construction and different elements. The CAC meeting was an exciting one because they hosted the candidate forum that they do every 2 years. Candidates for Area 3 and Area 5 participated. So we were able to hear some of their views and enjoy seeing their faces, because that's one part of the pandemic. We're not able to see candidates in the same way that we have in the past. I wanted to thank all of you for the participation in the study session on October 7th. I found it very helpful and insightful, and I look forward to when we're holding more of those. And on Friday, Dr. Clark and I and Mr. Alvarado stood out in the sunshine along with Laura and Austin for the rocket ship parade. And they, so the families drove by Dent Center, gave a shout out to all of us, and you know, the cars were decorated, the children were happy, and they also did a meal distribution while we were there. So that was a fun event to be out in the sunshine and seeing some smiling faces. And the one final thing I want to talk about is some of you may know Betty Boatman, who is a member of the Contra Costa Water District. On September 2nd, 2020, she announced that she would not be seeking re-election this November 3rd. And it's remarkable because she has served on this position as an elected member of the Contra Costa Water District for over 46 years. She has brought many programs and services to the Mount Diablo School District and has been highly supportive of many of our efforts throughout the district. So I just wanted to give her a shout out, and if you happen to know her, please send her an email communication or drop her a note. If you need her address, I happen to have it. And she's just been a champion and a model of good governance as far as being an elected member of a board. And she's also very known for her critical eye around finances. So we will miss her, but we know that she will be out there forever advising us, and don't be surprised if you get a phone call from her. So congratulations and thank you to Betty Boatman for her service in our community through all these years.
Great, thank you, Ms. Mayo. Ms. Durkee?
So most first, I'll say ditto, and many of the things that Ms. Mayo was at. I was also at the Budget Advisory Committee. I'll just add that I was really impressed as well with the direction that that committee is going in. I think it's very exciting, and I think it'll be a real service to the board as well as the superintendent. So I want to thank Dr. Gonzalez for her leadership there. Business Education Alliance meeting, the CAC meeting, our special board meeting, I also really appreciated that. The only thing I would add is I did participate at their invitation. The rocket ship had a virtual tour. So Ms. Count and I were both in attendance there along with Dr. Clark. So I would just end with vote, 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 vote. You know, I think, you know, as I've gone through different life experiences, your awareness of the importance of it, you know, increases. But it's also, you know, I think for people to know that, you know, every time you vote, you may not feel like you're completely knowledgeable about every single thing you can vote for. And I don't think that should discourage anybody. I think where and when you can and seek out more information on whether it's propositions or candidates, I would do that. If you don't know who to vote for, or what, you know, you really have no clue, there are probably people you could contact and get their opinions. You can go to people's websites. There's just lots you can do. and it can be very time consuming. So I understand that as well, but I just encourage people to keep kind of getting better and better at that process. I'm particularly interested in and / concerned about, you know, the Mount Diablo Unified School Board. And, you know, I've said this 1,000 times that I feel very strongly that school board members should be people who care deeply about public education. And that should be the main reason that they're running for a school board. So we'll look forward to that outcome. And I think I'll just leave it. I'm getting more and more philosophical as my term is coming to an end. So I'll try not to be on too many soapboxes between now and then. So I'll just leave it at that tonight. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Durkee. Ms. Count?
Thank you. Yeah, so in addition to some of the things that were already mentioned, the Contra Costa County School Boards Association meeting was on October 1st with a focus on equity, and we heard from the equity coordinator from San Ramon Unified, and then we also heard from school board members in San Mateo who have taken on efforts countywide. It started with the state level CSBA, School Boards Association Equity Network, and they decided to bring that local to their county in San Mateo and talk to us about the benefits of that. And so that's something that Contra Costa can consider as well as we move into that work together. Also appreciated the town hall that was led by the Black Educators Association. With Superintendent Clark. They did ask you some very tough questions, and I thought it was really great to have that conversation of some really important topics. So thank you to Black Educators Association. I also wanted to just say Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. I was really glad that we could recognize that with a resolution tonight. I know that we do recognize our Native American students and communities in many different ways. But I hope that we as a board continue to explore how we can ensure you know, the best representation and inclusion of Indigenous people in our curriculum and in our classrooms. In particular, I'd love to see us connect with and learn from current local tribes and hear from our own Native American students about their perspectives. I feel like sometimes that's the missing piece. I know, like in my own situation, my daughters learned in our school district about the Bay Miwok in our area, but it was learned more as a historical piece as opposed to making that connection with our modern day people. I was just reading that according to the US Census, the Indigenous population in the Bay Area is now 18,500 strong and projected to grow over the next few decades. And then a couple of resources out there. One is bayareaequityatlas.org that has some key data and strategies. One of the pieces of data that they have was for the 9 counties in the Bay Area. 1/4 of Native American youth between the ages of 16 and 24 are neither working nor enrolled in school, which was the highest share among the major racial ethnic groups. So they cite challenges such as lack of cultural competency in school administration and culturally inappropriate curriculum are some of the barriers for Indigenous youth. So those are some of the areas that that I know we're looking at, and other districts are as well, about how we can improve our curricula and content. And along those lines, I did find this fantastic book that I just ordered for my own family. But if you've heard of the People's History of the United States, there's also an Indigenous People's History of the United States. But the one that I didn't know about is an Indigenous People's History of the United States for young people. And this is Indigenous human rights advocate Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz adapted the text fully for middle grade and young adult readers. And it includes discussion topics, archival images, original maps, recommendations for reading, and ways to encourage students and teachers and readers in general to think critically about their own place in history. So kind of excited about that resource out there. did is, I don't know if I could hold this up, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain. Looks like that. By Zaretta Hammond. And there was a really robust discussion around this, and teachers were really excited to see the very concrete ideas and strategies that were in the book. So that was very exciting. And lastly, a resource for students. I know there's been a lot of discussion and concern around the mental health of our students. And I noticed that the California Department of Education announced their annual Directing Change program and film contest. And it invites California students from grades 7 through 12 to create 60-second films about suicide prevention, mental health, and related cultural perspectives. So that's pretty exciting. And there's a bunch of resources there. So for information on that, you can go to directingchangeca.org. Yes, and lastly, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Clark and President Lawrence for organizing the study session from last week, and to all of our community that has been writing to us and giving us all your various perspectives on the various ways that we should explore reopening our schools. It is one of the most important things that we need to be focused on right now is how to do it and how to do it safely and carefully for the health, safety, and education of all. So we're going to continue to move forward very carefully and deliberately and collaboratively to make those important decisions. And I'll close with vote yes on Prop 15, schools and communities first. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Count. Ms. Mason?
I'll be very brief. I think the only thing I went to that hasn't already been mentioned was the Healthy and Active Before 5 quarterly meeting, which was all about planning your vote, getting out to vote, and their emphasis was on Prop 15 and Measure X, which is a county initiative. Mm-hmm. And other than that, I was at the CSBA and the Business Alliance and the study session, and I'll pass off to you, President Lawrence.
Great, thank you. So I will put a quick plug in for the fact that for us October birthdays, you can still register to vote, and that 16 and 17-year-olds are actually in California able to pre-register. So you don't have to wait until you turn 18 to register. And I think that's something not everyone's aware of. You can go ahead and do it in advance. And so especially for anyone who has a birthday between now and Election Day, they can go right now and register and be able to vote on Election Day this year, or if they want to pre-register for future elections. So I think there's that. And then I wanted to just take a moment and, I also want to thank Dr. Clark and staff for their work for our study session last week. A couple things stood out to me. I think that one, we need to recognize that there are a large segment of students and teachers and staff who, for health reasons, for safety reasons, do not feel comfortable returning to the classroom. And I think we need to do everything possible to honor that and to not put anyone's health in danger. And so continue to look at our distance learning program and improve that and provide that as a continued option for what I would say is the foreseeable future as we work through things. And I think that's a really important part. The other part is that there is a large number of our teachers, our staff, and our students and families who do want to return to the classroom. And I think we as a board have consistently said all along that that is one of our goals. And we recognize that everything we've done in distance learning, and I think as a board member and also as a parent, I've seen huge improvements from what we saw in March. And appreciate everyone's hard work, but I think we recognize that it is not a complete replacement for in-person learning, and also that we're seeing more and more data around the fact that as students are returning to schools throughout the country, that thankfully students seem to be less of a transmission risk than adults, but certainly we have adults in classrooms, and so that's something we have to balance. The fact that over 200,000 Americans have lost their lives to COVID, and so maintaining that balance. But my hope would be that we can find a way to safely allow students and teachers and staff who want to return to the classroom the opportunity to do so. And I think that, one of the things that I took away from our study session was let's first look at the students in very small populations who are struggling and who we want to get back in as quickly as possible. And that's one. And then second is I've made the statement before, I don't know that we're going to be able to just return everyone. Well, I know we're not going to be able to have everyone come back all at once. And so I think we're going to be deliberate about that rollout. But I think the next step is for us as a board to work with the superintendent and look at that for those two groups of, first, those very small populations, and second, a larger return and how we would phase that. And this has to be done in conjunction with our employee groups, with our bargaining units. So this needs to be a partnership. This is not something we're able to just unilaterally do. But in consultation with Dr. Clark, we're going to have a special board meeting next week. We'll announce the date and time shortly, but we'll have it next week, at which point Dr. Clark and staff will work to come forward with some options for what that reopening may look like. My hope would be if either at that meeting or at the very latest 2 weeks from today, which would be October 26th, that the board would take a vote on that. And this will be, continue to be subject to two things. One, the agreement with our bargaining units. And two, I think we have to recognize that if you look back since March, there's certainly have been a lot of twists and turns and things change, and we need to be aware of that. And so that there would be flexibility built into this, but to provide to our community the timeline that we're looking at, what measurements we're looking at, and how we're viewing this. And so that is the plan, is that next week we will have that special board meeting, and either at that special board meeting or at October 26th, I would anticipate that the board would be helping to give direction to the superintendent and staff on the direction and on the timeline. So that seems like a good segue over to Dr. Clark, who can, as part of his superintendent report, correct me on anything or amplify anything I just said there, as well as to whatever he has to report to us. So Dr. Clark, over to you.
Thank you very much, President Lawrence. Just couple quick things is that, definitely I've seen several of the trustees this last week out at many of the events that were mentioned. It's always my pleasure to have the opportunity to either be a fly on the wall at these events or to participate at any level that is necessary. The one thing I will say is that we have very committed staff members, very committed community members who are willing to come together and do what they can to support our students. And so that is something that is evident in all of these committees and groups that get together regularly to talk about the students and programs of the Mount Diablo Unified School District. So as we went into this year, we communicated out to our families that we were 100% committed to distance learning at this time. And we have not wavered from that commitment. And I know that distance learning is not our number one choice in terms of educating our students. I will be the first to say that there is no substitute for a student and teacher face-to-face in class with all of the support systems that are available throughout all of our school sites. However, with that said, we have lost over close to 210,000 citizens with this pandemic. There is close to 8 million infected persons throughout the country, and we are on a 4-tier system within our county. And for the longest, we were at the most restrictive tier, and we just have moved into the 3rd most restrictive tier that that it does still, we are not able to open at this point without a waiver because our tiers are still, we haven't quite met all of the metrics that would allow us to reopen. So we're, by tomorrow or the next day, there will be opportunities for some schools within the county to start reopening under the hybrid model. So I think if we're talking about the safety of our students and safety of staff and also the safety of our community, that we don't want to go from the most restrictive tier and then as soon as there's a shed of light, we jump into it and start all of a sudden bringing everybody back. And then, not that we would want this to happen, but if cases rise, if we have a tough flu season, things of that nature, then having us have to fall back into 100% distance learning. So we have been in 100% distance learning. When the news of the waivers came out, I was very clear and very transparent that Mount Diablo Unified, after consultation with the board, would not be applying for a waiver. And now that we're just starting to move from purple into red, we're still not ready to start bringing kids back onto our campuses, tomorrow. So I definitely feel for the students. I feel for the families, that are, doing distance learning at this time. However, we are going to use a safe and very deliberate process in moving forward so that we don't have to stop and go in terms of our kids being on campus. So as President Lawrence alluded to, we will be having a study session next week. As a staff, we will be making some recommendations in terms of what it would look like if we were starting to bring some of our more needy students back to our school sites to get support, however that may look. And then as we continue on, we will present a long-term plan of what a phased-in approach will look like as we get to that place. So again, I just my heart goes out to our young students who are unable to access our campuses right now. But we are, unfortunately, in a global pandemic. We're still, as a board, we're still meeting virtually, as most boards are around the Bay Area and around California. And so, again, we want to be very deliberate and cautious as we move forward. So we are in distance learning, and we will be in distance learning for the foreseeable future until we, until the data and some of these things are worked out where we can start to bring students back safely to our campuses. So with that, I don't want to belabor the point, but we will be talking in more detail about this next week. But I just want to, in closing, I just want to say that we really need to be patient with one another. Our students need to be patient with themselves. Our teachers need to be patient with themselves. I know that our parents are under a great deal of stress, and they also, need to give themselves some leeway in this situation. This is difficult on all of us, but we are trying our best. We're putting our best foot forward. We're making the best of a very challenging situation, and I think we all should just acknowledge the work that we are all doing as individuals to get through this very trying time. So with that, that'll conclude my superintendent remarks, unless there's any questions from the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. With that, we're going to move to our consent agenda, which is item 15.0. So items listed under consent agenda are considered routine and will be approved, adopted by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. However, any item may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of any member of the board and acted upon separately. So with that, we have 10 items on the consent agenda. And so I would ask of the board, are there any items that we would like to pull off for separate consideration?
15.4, please.
Okay, 15.4. Any others? Okay, might I get a motion for approval of the consent agenda minus item 15.4?
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda with the removal of 15.4.
Second.
Okay, motion Ms. Mason, second Ms. Mayo. Ms. Mayo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
I vote yes. So the consent agenda passes 5-0, and we now move to separate consideration of item 15.4, which is review and potential approval of recommended action for classified personnel. Ms. Cound, did you have a question or a comment on this one?
Thank you. Yeah, it's more of a comment. I think just looking at the leave of absences and resignations, I'm seeing a number of our bilingual staff and our special education assistants, some very crucial positions. So I'm just wondering, you know, if we know why these are occurring, if they're occurring out of, you know, fear that we might open too quickly, or, you know, or if it's just individual circumstances, and sort of, do we have a plan moving forward for how to fill these crucial roles that will be needed if we want to move forward to reopening?
Yes, so I could, you know, of course I could respond. However, I'm going to turn it over to the person who works very, very closely with this, and that would be Dr. Rubio.
Yes, I think that's a great question. I don't believe that there's any pattern that we're seeing. I'm aware of one of these that I saw come in through email where the employee had said, "Hey, I've got a better opportunity, a job opportunity," but I haven't seen any kind of pattern or anything like that, or I haven't received any other information regarding those. So we'll go ahead and make sure we're doing everything we can to continue to advertise and fill these positions. It is concerning, but so I don't know if it's a matter of people at this time looking for other job opportunities, but we haven't seen a pattern yet.
Okay, great. Yep. Thank you.
And
with that, I move to approve item 15.4, the recommended action for classified personnel.
And a second.
I'll second.
Okay, motion Ms. Cound, second Ms. Durkee. Ms. Durkee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Mayo?
Yes.
I vote yes. Item passes 5-0. We are done with the consent agenda. We move along to business action items, and we start with 18.1, potential approval of the revision of board policy 5116.1, intra-district open enrollment, which is an action item and also related to 18.2. So Dr. Clark, I turn it to you.
So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Aguili to talk about these items. She will present all of the related items in 18.1 and 18.2.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for paying attention to this event, to the policy tonight. As I mentioned last time, when we had talked about the particular policy, the original document that was presented as current was not the last one that the board heard back in January of 2018. That particular policy that was presented in 2018 was not uploaded into our GAMET system. So the people who were definitely invested in that process back in January 2018 are still definitely invested in that process today, and certainly impacts their community. And at that time, one of the major focuses around that was fixing what we know as the split feeder patterns, where our schools break out into different programs. And I just want to say that I really did hear loud and clear last time from the board that that was still a priority for the board, as is maintaining the cohorts for students. And I would say that as school district employees, we also feel that's really important, that we honor the students. The reason why we had the splits fixed, for lack of a better term, or the cohort model included, was because it's a student issue, right? So students go to school, they become ingrained, they make their friends, they make their community, the whole system comes together, and then unfortunately it splits off at certain points. And we certainly don't want to make our adult problems with, staff driving, children around to different school sites overtake student problems, but we also do want to recognize that there is another additional problem in the policy, and we're looking to see if there's a way that we could maybe address both issues of the children needing to remain within their cohorts and definitely not disrupting that, but also address the issue that's created by the last policy in which staff have priority in order to take their children to the school at which they are employed for 10 hours per week. And I know last time we heard a little bit about some of the concerns around our itinerant staff. And I know that we heard some concerns around certainly some of the more highly requested programs being impacted by district sites and so by district staff. And so we sought to address that within the program that's presented before you this evening. And I've continued to get phone calls and I've continued to get emails around the policy as presented. And certainly we know that one option as presented can be adjusted by the board, should you choose to do so, should you have something else that you want to consider or discuss. And hopefully that we can also make some suggestions to address some of those concerns. We don't have the luxury of submitting 2 or 3 options at once for you to consider. So hopefully we can have an opportunity to talk through some of those concerns. I did want to provide a little data that you had asked for last time regarding the numbers of transfers that this policy will impact. We've heard tonight multiple times from parents from the Bancroft split per se, and I wanted to provide a little data on that. As of today, we have 88 fifth graders in Bancroft, and 36 of them are enrolled in the two-way dual immersion program. 25 of those students are transferred into Bancroft. So it appears that the majority of Bancroft residents are not enrolled in the two-way dual immersion program. But for those that are fortunate enough to be able to do so, that certainly would not impact their ability to transfer to another school, but it may have impacts on those 25 families who are in that situation. So that's one number for us to consider. Another set of numbers is I have transfer data from 1920 and 21 regarding the numbers of employee transfers. So in 1920, we had 66 transfer applications from employees. I want to just remind everybody that employees' children may fall into multiple different areas. They may be siblings, they may fall into cohorts, but at some point on that form, they did indicate that they were employed by the district. And of those 66, 8 of them were accepted straight away as a priority that their parents were employed for 10 hours a week at that school site. There were an additional 38 who made it in as a either appeal or under another category, which would be the cohort category or the program request. There is a process which is open to any student who submits a transfer, and that's the appeal process. Sometimes things kind of shake out, as we project certain numbers of students to be enrolled in a school site, and then sometimes they show up, and sometimes, for some reason that they're off by a few students, which may open up a space or not. And then any student who is appealing is processed through that system. So 38 got in, which that year in 1920 made 28 employee transfers denied. This last round, which is for this school year, we had fewer applications. We had 57 transfer applications that indicated employees. Again, maybe multiple categories. Of those, 17 of them made it in as the first kind of pass at that because their parent or was an employee of the site at which they chose for 10 hours a week or more. 29 that year made it in on the appeal or cohort or other model. And that meant, again, ironically, 28 employee children were not granted transfers this year. So slightly under half for both years, for actually slightly over half for the second year, but around half of the transfers are granted, half are not. So that's something that we might want to look at there if that data makes a difference one way or the other. The other thing that I am hearing, and I did hear from one parent today, and I promised I would bring it up, is that this information was previously in a board policy. It's now been moved to an AR. And as you know, board policies are typically ed code language, but I just did want to give you that feedback as a board because I would be remiss if I didn't. So I wanted to pass that along. Another thing that I've been asked again was what happens if a student goes through the cohort model and then they go through, Diablo View, and then they end up going, then obviously there is no feeder high school to Diablo View because that goes to Clayton Valley. So what happens? And so I did go ahead and check with student services, and typically that child goes back to the original process, and they are available for the choice transfer, but then they are also the cohort transfer if there is a matching program within the school district that's more appropriate. So I did want to get that information to you. So the way it stands right now is that we definitely wanted to address the board's concern around, over enrolling particular employees at particular sites around the district, and we understand the concern about the cohorts. So as presented, this would certainly limit the transfers to what's, the feeder patterns per se. I was asked the question about what would happen if, say, for example, staff at the Den Center, which is located next to Monty Gardens, put in for a transfer, where would they go? And that would be to the closest elementary schools, which would be Wren or Westwood. And all transfers, including those transfers, would be granted only on a space available basis. So you would definitely never displace a resident of the area in order to grant a transfer. But that's not true just for employee transfers. That's true for all of them. And yes, so that's where I wanted to leave it, and I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any other information that you needed or discuss any other options.
So I think we have several things to talk about, but let me just start with this one. I want to just share the reason it went higher up in my level of, concerns or list of concerns was when the language changed around the cohort. So in priority, what's showing in the version you're giving us as priority, the fifth priority, and I understand the rationale is the change that happened. So let me just be specific. So where it starts, for example, it says El Dorado to Concord High / Mount Diablo High. So that was a change from the original definition or the last definition we saw that never made it into Gamut. But and so that's when it gave me pause about how are we defining cohorts. And all I know is what I heard when Dr. Meyer was here, but it was just verbal, and obviously nothing was in here specifically. So when when you have a split, I don't know enough to know what's typical, but let's say a split is like, 60% of the students by residence would go, to this, from an elementary to a middle school, and then 40% go to a different middle school, which is what the split means, right? So would both of those groups, so if I'm a child in an elementary school, and maybe the cohort is it being part of dual immersion, that could be one way of defining a cohort, right? So it really isn't about numbers. But if I'm a child that's going to this middle school, but I'm in a school where some of the kids are going to that middle school. Can I make a case that I'm part of that cohort? You know, so it just got muddier for me because we named the 2 potential high schools. So anyway, it's just very muddy for me. So I don't want to define in a way that makes it more cumbersome either, you know, if it kind of has unintended consequences. So we know, I think we all kind of know what the point was by using the term cohort. You know, it's just as you described it very well at the beginning. That's the intent. And so, but I just, if we start fine tuning like we did adding the second high school, then I start wondering, is it, you know, this is for the future, how is it going to get interpreted? So I'm just interested in your thoughts and maybe other people's around what's the definition of a cohort? I mean, I understand you're part of a group, that much I know, but how does that get defined in a school that has a split feeder pattern?
So as I'm flipping back through the documents in the 2018, it read that a cohort is defined as a group of students moving from one level to another. For example, Riverview to Mount Diablo High, Valley View to College Park, El Dorado to Concord, and Foothill to Northgate, and also includes the various feeder patterns at the elementary school.
Right, which is not very specific. I mean, it's not really, yeah.
Right.
And then I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I'm being clear here. So then when we went from that, and then we added the second high school in the definition, right?
And I believe that was an attempt to clarify that some of the, not all of the Valley View students do go to College Park. There's a part of the residence area that doesn't, I believe, is the way that works, but the intent is not to disrupt any cohorts. There was never an intent to change anything about the cohort model. So if the board is more comfortable with the previous language, with it just lists the one school that typically is the feeder pattern, then that would work.
So can I, and I'm sorry if I'm being dense, I'll say it up front if I'm being dense, but, or that I may be being dense, but so in the example you just gave, so Valley View, some go to College Park, some go, is that what you just said? Some go to,
yes.
No, that wasn't the exact, yeah, some go to Ignacio Valley.
Yes.
What was the, or Mount Diablo, I can't remember what you said.
Yeah, my understanding that there's a small group of students who were formerly at Glenbrook who then went to Valley View, who then typically would go to Mount Diablo, but would be afforded the opportunity to go to College Park.
They would, okay, under that definition of a cohort.
Was an example of what we were saying. And it's the same with the other part of the Glenbrook split went to El Dorado, but then typically they would feed into Mount, but they would still have the opportunity to be afforded to go to Concord because of the cohort model. I think it was an attempt to clarify that, but if you feel like the old language makes it more clear, certainly you could adopt a resolution that
Yeah, I mean, I guess if the other is the reverse of that, and the example you gave is not as likely to happen, right, in reality, for a student who Valley View, to, you know, whatever elementary that keeps them in, that would be to Valley View to College Park, would say, hey, I want to go to Mount Diablo.
Right. What I'm hearing is that if it's their neighborhood school, like their Valley View, and I guess most from Valley View go to College Park, but some by neighborhood are supposed to go to Mount Diablo High. So if they wanted to go to Mount Diablo High, that would be under number 1. They're within Mount Diablo High's attendance area. So I don't see why we would need to then mention Mount Diablo in number 5 under the cohort. I think that's where it's confusing for me.
Yeah.
Is that if you list them both under the cohort,
right,
then which one's the cohort, right?
Exactly.
Whereas the previous,
that's exactly right.
The 2018 language
yeah,
seemed to define the cohorts, which is a choice that you could decide to transfer based on a cohort that would be, in some cases, different than your neighborhood school. Does that make sense?
And the intent
was that those parents, their kids would be going to school in elementary, they'd make friends, and then depending where they lived on the side of the creek, as I recall, some of them went one way, some of them went the other. So we made the decision that those kids should be able to move as a cohort. They just had to make their decision and then stick with that cohort as it went through. Right. And that's all I care about, is that we maintain the integrity of that decision.
Right.
Because that's really what drove the whole decision. And it seems to have worked. Parents seem to be happy. We haven't had all the problems. The only when it came back to us, the only thing that I was surprised about is I thought we had talked about a district employee that works 10 hours or more in the district. If they wanted their child to go to the school that they worked at, we were fine with that, but we weren't necessarily saying because you worked in the district, you could pick any school in the district for your
Right.
child to go to. And that language seemed to change when it came back this time. And now it looks like it's back to you could go to any school. And Linda wants to weigh in now.
No,
Okay.
I don't want to weigh in. I would like for us to keep the
Yeah.
topics separate. Can we talk about the employee item separately from the one about the cohort?
Yeah.
Because it gets confusing when we jump back and forth. And it's not just because I'm slow at tracking your great
No,
thoughts.
right.
I wanted to suggest, I want to say something that was shared with me first, and then I wanted to ask a question about the cohort process. And a parent shared with me, and the example was Valley View Middle School, that some of the students that were there because of the Glenbrook situation had to make a choice for themselves and return to Mount Diablo High School because they were told there wasn't space available for them, even though they were part of a cohort group at College Park High School. So I don't know the validity of that statement, but that was a piece of information that was shared with me. The other piece was that there was, by a different parent, was that students from split feeder pattern schools were being grouped in cohorts and provided admission to a school that was not part of their feeder pattern area. So I'll just throw out an example. A student from Highlands Elementary School, a group of them were enrolled. Well, that doesn't work because that's, let me come up with a better example. Wren Avenue, nope, that doesn't work either. Silverwood, perhaps. They were a cohort group and they are going to Valley View Middle School, and they got in as a cohort group because a group of them, 5, 10, I don't know how many,
Right.
were admitted. So my question is there value in adding to the cohort definition the words split feeder pattern in a matriculation process? For example, when students are moving from one level to another level because of the matriculation, which is graduation, moving to the next level, that is limited to split feeder pattern schools.
I think that's a good thought.
That
Yeah.
seems like that's the only time it would make sense. Because I'd never heard of split feeder until I was on the board, because in Bay Point, you went from this school to this school to this school. There wasn't any split pattern.
Yeah, we do
So-
have split. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you look on the district website, if you pull up split feeder pattern, there's are 2 documents on that website page, and you will see that there are a much greater number of schools that have split feeder pattern than we would normally assume.
Yeah, I remember that came up when we were back in 2018 when we were dealing with it. We found, I thought there weren't a lot, but I thought there were 2 or 3 at the time. I think I want to go back to your point, Ms. Mayo. I think it's a really creative idea, really good idea, what you're saying. I just want to go back to the example you gave. Let me just see if I can clarify from the parent concerned about College Park. So it's possible that some handful of students get into Valley View based on, just whatever other priority or lower down the list. They get in, and then
these students were part of the Valley View feeder pattern.
Oh, I see. Okay. And they couldn't get into College Park.
Correct.
And so they were part of it because they lived in the area.
Correct.
I see what you're saying. Okay, I misunderstood. Thank you. Yeah, I think I think that's an idea worth considering. Is it really, because it could get so muddy with, you know, when it, say a handful, if we're not saying, defining it by any number, then a handful of students get in and suddenly they become a cohort and they're not from that feeder pattern. And so then, you know, it just, anyway, I think that that is potentially might solve the problem that I see it. I think by adding a second school, there's a sort of another element here of kind of presuming when someone is in a split feeder pattern that they're going to want to go to this particular high school. And that's, I think, an unfortunate thing to acknowledge, you know, in a policy, you know what I'm saying? So I think that by putting the second high school, I kind of assuming that was the intent, is that you could have a student that would say, I don't want to go to Northgate, I want to go to Ignacia Valley High School. You know, and although I'm in a feeder pattern that is really Northgate, I want to go over here. So I understand from a logic standpoint, but I think, again, how we define cohort is where it gets muddy.
I think that would just go under the different category, right?
Right,
If you were at Bancroft and you lived in the area near Oak Grove Middle that normally goes to YV High, but you went to Foothill for some reason, you transferred in, but then you wanted to go to YV High, you'd go to YV High as a
under your regular
resident. That'd be number one.
Yeah.
If you were already at Foothill and you wanted to go to Northgate, you would do that through the cohort because you're already at Foothill. So I think you have the choice.
If I could clarify a couple of different points. The first one is that if you were to be a student who was attending Valley View, but your home residence high school were to be Mount Diablo, you wouldn't need to fill out an intra-district transfer. That would just simply occur.
Right, that's right. Yeah, right.
Another question was around that some of the students had filled out the intra-district transfer to go to College Park, but they were denied that transfer. And that is possible because, remember, these are inter-district transfers based on space.
Right.
There's not space available, and this particular cohort model comes after currently residents and siblings, and then you know, employees who work at that site for 10 hours. So this particular, you know, not to muddy the water about employees, but this definitely could certainly adjust that cohort, which is why we want to talk about that separately.
Yeah.
And then to be really clear, I think that under the model for 2018, I just want to read the definition, which was as defined as a group of students moving from one level to another. For example, Riverview to Mount Diablo High, Valley View to College Park, El Dorado to Concord High, Foothill to Northgate, and also includes various feeder patterns traveling from elementary school to middle schools. And I do believe that the adding of the second school was an attempt to define it because to Ms. Mayo's point, we're not aware of any situations where a cohort of students has said, okay, there's, you know, 12 of us at Silverwood and we all want to transfer over to Valley View and make our own cohort. We're not aware of any situations that have occurred like that. Those would be choice transfers, and they'd be offered on a space available. So even if there were 12, it wouldn't be a cohort. Adding the separate school was really in an attempt to clarify sort of what that was, but certainly, you know, the board could propose other language.
What do you think? Does it work to frame it around only for the split, where there are split feeder patterns?
I believe that was
that's a limited, right?
It does. It limits it, and that was the original intent of the board, and it was not the intent of staff to change that model. It does appear to be working.
And you're by naming these high schools, you're identifying where there are splits.
Or alternatively, you could propose adopting the old language, and a cohort is defined of students, you know, et cetera, through the schools, and then put in something about to address the split feeder patterns. You could add language to that, which would really further add clarity that's not there currently, where Ms. Mayo's scenario could actually be claimed by a group of people.
How much difficulty are we having with the cohort model that we have now, though? Like, I know there are scenarios where we might have issues, but I'm trying to understand, like, how often is student services hearing that there's been an issue this year or last year with the cohort policy? Because from what I've heard, it's been night and day compared to what we had before we went and took action to fix the split. So I'm trying to understand, are we a solution in search of a problem here, or what is the problem that we're trying to solve at this point?
The cohort model is working very well. We also have appreciated it from a district side. It's made it very clean, and so that's been good. The problem that we're trying to address is the issue of, it's more of the employee related issue, and I'll give you one of the most examples. So for right now, staff who are working at Westwood, for example, and their children come to them to Westwood on a transfer, that works really well. Because then those children are eligible to go to El Dorado and Concord High as part of the feeder pattern, the cohort model per se. So that's not a problem. The problem where it does become an issue is if, for example, the parent is an employee at Concord High and they have elementary school age children, then they are not able to go through the cohort model. They are put into the choice field. An alternative around that might be that if you had two employee categories where you had the employee at the school site remaining in third, but then you had employees within the feeder pattern after the cohort model, that wouldn't destruct your cohort model, but it would also give preference to the employees in order to take their children. But that would be something, again, for the whole board to consider.
So can I just say, Brian, Mr. Lawrence, to respond to your question, I think the problem we're trying to say is literally what, because we're updating a policy and some words got added, which then I think made it create some confusion, some concern that it's not really representing the original intent. I agree. I hear that it's working well, but obviously that's the staff implementing in the way that they understood the board wanted it. But when you start putting words on paper, for the future, it gets more concerning. So that's the only problem. I think it's, again, working. And I do think, yes, the concern for those that are utilizing that, that category is changing the employee one and the impact that's going to have. So which is the conversation we need to have about the employee one. But I just didn't want to lose that thread on this one. So maybe we can come to a conclusion of, proposing some rewording, as you just said, Dr. Aguili, about, split feeder, adding that, and maybe not even talking about the schools or something that clarifies. I think for me, that would address it.
I guess, and my position would be, and this was mentioned earlier by a board member, that, it is important to separate the two. And so to me, I would look to staff for the language that would help best define the cohort model that is currently working and that, so I would welcome staff's feedback in terms of here is the best language to encapsulate the policy that is currently working and the board has expressed support for and we want to continue. So that to me, that's one piece.
Right.
The other piece is this conversation around, and I appreciate Dr. Aguili's comment, how do we think about giving priority to employees where previously the board has limited that pretty narrowly to staff at a particular site. And so do we want to expand that and keep that as a higher priority, which would effectively diminish the number of students in the priorities below that? Or do we want to look at keeping a, one possibility that I appreciate Dr. Aguili bringing up is keeping a very narrow policy for employees at the sites in a higher priority, and then perhaps below the cohort and below the choice schools and some of those other things, we could look at a broader one. But, I think that comes down to, what the priority is for this board. And we've always, during my time on the board, what we've have emphasized is first neighborhood and community, We've expressed support for this cohort model, which is now working very well. 3, we've expressed support for the choice schools, which have a system set up. And, I think what we've wanted to do is not just kind of circumnavigate that and jump people to the head of the line around these policies that we've had, these enrollment practices at the choice schools. And then we had also given, hey, we do value and understand if a teacher's at a staff member's at a site and they have a child, that it would make sense to enroll that child, if they wanted to, that they could enroll that child there. So those are the things that I've understood us as a board to kind of stand for. And I've been very comfortable with those. I would be open to keeping that same priority, and I didn't exactly read them in the order they are, but keeping what we have as current priorities. And then if we want to expand for employees, that we do that, but at a local level.
Can I ask a clarifying question as well? Is the 4th priority that we have, which is the Monty Gardens, is that an inter-district transfer process? Is that what they do for both of those situations, for both going from Monty Gardens and Sequoia Elementary to Sequoia Middle? Do they have to fill out inter-district transfer? They do. Okay. Okay. For both of those scenarios. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
I agree with what's been stated so far. My one concern is we as a group have been using the terminology choice schools. The word choice is not in this board policy, nor is it in the AR, nor is it in board policy. So I think how do we define choice, or is this just something that we use as common terminology to refer to any application process? We see it printed in some documents, but it's not in the board policy. So I struggle when we throw it out, use that term, when it's actually very restrictive through all of our processes. The other thing I wanted to ask about is I happened to look at the TWDI application process that's on the website. It has another priority listed on it, which refers to any student who comes from a military family, has a choice, has the option for choice. Wow. So I would like and this was part of the process in 2018-19. That particular web page wasn't updated in 1920, and it's yet to be updated for this next spring, or it may go away altogether, I don't know. But my question for staff is, are our military families do the right to a choice? Well, here I'm using choice. Do they have a priority according to Ed Code or federal law that we should be considering as well? Because it's not in these two policies. I did a search on the gamut policies and I could not identify anything. And I did a search on our website and I couldn't find anything. So I would appreciate that clarification.
So one just follow up to Linda's question on the word choice. I did see that as the number 6 in the 2018 version that apparently was not uploaded to Gamut. Number 6 was called choice, which now in the new version would be our 7th priority, but it doesn't say choice now. It just says all students who are resident of the district not described above, but it doesn't say choice, which gave me pause because on the website, Ms. Mayo, that you were just referring to that shows the feeder patterns in the Clayton area where their high school used to be Clayton Valley, it says choice and for their high school because they don't have a neighborhood high school. So I thought that's what choice was defined as, that specific situation in Clayton where they do not have a neighborhood high school, therefore they have the choice of all of the high schools. So I thought they were priority number 6 under the definition of the term choice. So Definitely wondering what that word means at this point and where Clayton fits in.
The way that the word is used is, yes, there's a separate situation for students who reside in Clayton that we know the board approved around that several years ago, where the children get to work with their families and identify their school. And that is part of the choice process. Choice historically was used as a, just families making a choice, which is why it's changed in this one, attempting to clarify the difference between the two. Because our students do not, if they have a resident school, they don't have that same options as the kids who live in the undesignated choice area. And that was obviously at a different time on the board.
So where does that put Clayton now in terms of their high school transfer process? Does that become number 1 in terms of what high school they choose, as opposed to it used to be number 6?
Yeah, that process is not included in here. That is elsewhere within the different policies of the board, is my understanding. That was how I asked.
So is that a change from current practice? Was it the last few years that they got to choose their school, but they were number 6 on the list? Or were they always number 1 on the list as defined by neighborhood?
No, they were, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You probably. I thought they were number 1, that they got to choose. Just like it's as if it's their neighborhood school, right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, they're not number 6.
Yeah.
They're not considered transfers at that point. They're designating their residence because they don't have one, and they typically do that, with my recollection, in the 7th grade, so the families have time to.
So
in that case, that it is actually clearer for our number 7 to not have the word choice, because it can get confusing.
Yeah, right. I did, I think, submit another suggestion just for trying to support clarity is, and let me check my thinking. So number 2 through 7 are all intra-district transfer processes where they have fill out forms. So I appreciate that you changed the wording that introduces this section, because the number 1 is not an inter-district transfer. It's just, you just go to your school, right? Your home school. But everything from after, and the number 2, the little phrasing starts out with inter-district transfer request from, but it doesn't say that the rest of the way down, so it seems like each one of these should have that phrase introducing the paragraph, so it's clear that this is an inter-district transfer process that you have to complete, right? Just to help. There might be another way to address it, but that's just one idea.
Do we have a proposal as to how we would like to move forward?
I still have another question.
Ms. Mayo?
I'll complicate it. Well, maybe this one is under board policy, not under the AR, because are we providing direction? Which one are you asking for direction for right now, Mr. Lawrence? Okay, I'll present my question. I had asked for a copy of the CSBA model policy, and in the board policy, it mentions the fact that if a student is transferred because of bullying, if the student is eligible for free or reduced priced meals and receives an inter-district transfer as the result of being a victim of bullying, the district may, but is not required to, provide transportation assistance to any other student who is a victim of bullying. I don't recall that we had discussed that option, and is that something we as a board want to consider?
To answer your question, Mr. Lawrence, it sounds like it needs to come back to us, because now there's the whole military issue that's brought up that I'd never heard before. So it's getting more and more convoluted as we sit here.
Well, the military question is not part of the policies. It's just was included in the bilingual application. So I was just asking the question for that. If it's, I didn't see it in the model policies, I don't know that it requires research. remember that we did have the Coast Guard schools there by Holbrook. And at one point in time, we had to fill out, everyone in the district had to fill out a form whether they were associated with the military and or involved with the Coast Guard. And that gave presumably the district more funding in that process. I don't know whether that was a carryover for that application process for the TWDI application.
Okay, so I'm gonna do a quick pause here, and I'd ask of Dr. Clark and Dr. Aguili, what are we trying to solve for here? I think there's a lot that we can add or tweak in this policy, but I'd like to just take a step back. And is the goal, what is the goal? And we have a timeline. So I want to make sure, I would suggest to the board that we try to address the concerns that were brought forward in a timely manner. And we can look at broadening or tightening the overall. I think there's still the opportunity to do that. But I do want to ask Dr. Aguili and or Dr. Clark, what is the objective from a staff perspective in terms of bringing this forward?
Two things. The first one is to clarify around the cohorts that it is for the split feeder patterns only. And the second one is to give some flexibility either through expanding the priority number 3 or by adding a priority after the cohort model for staff in the situation such as the ones I mentioned, including the high school ones, bringing in the elementary students. So it's really two different issues that we're attempting to address the type.
So I would just, can I make a suggestion that I mean, I like that idea that Mr. Lawrence came up with in terms of, keeping the employee one as it was before, it's at the site and, keeping it at the same level, but then adding another one that is broader. I think, was that, you're right? Am I getting that right, Mr. Lawrence?
It was adopted from what Dr. Aguili proposed, I believe. So.
Okay, sorry, I apologize. So I like that idea, Dr. Aguili. So I don't know if the rest of the field, so I mean, if we feel like there's agreement on that, then maybe they'd be to come back with, all of that fixed and the other things we've talked about. Maybe at our special meeting, which is supposed to be one topic, but no, okay, he's saying no. Well, I don't know how the time pressure is, I think, so yeah.
I think we could make a motion and then provide staff with the editorial ability to modify the language, and then it would just be brought back to us for information.
Yeah,
that's fine.
And I think to your point, Trustee Mayo, that there's two things. There's the board policy and the AR. So we'd first have a motion on the board policy.
Well, before we move on, my only
Seems a lot
issue with
more
the staff is, and I'm staff probably won't like me, but the staff at the school makes sense to me. To open it up to any other staff, all of us that are working parents had to hope our kids got in the school that we wanted them to go to when they got to whatever level. And to make something special for just staff, it doesn't make sense. Plus, I believe all of us should believe all of our schools are good schools, and it doesn't matter what school our child goes to, but that's just my opinion. As far as the staff part, adding the feeder pattern, split pattern language seems to clarify, and I'm good with that.
Okay. Further.
So I think the way that the board policy is right now, all of the things that we've been discussing have actually been the AR, not the board policy. So, and I understand that there was some concern about removing all of that detail from the board policy and only having it in the AR, but I think the board still provides direction on both, and so I am comfortable with the detail being in the AR as it normally is. So on that note, I would like to make a motion that we approve the board policy for intra-district open enrollment as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, and before I call for a vote, so I just want to make, so that would create a new priority.
No,
the board policy does not list the 7 priorities at all at this point. It simply has that in the AR. So the board policy is the BP 5116.1, and the public can click on the one that's called redlined to be able to see the changes. That's what I'm proposing.
Got it. Thank you. That's why I was asking for clarification before we voted. So
I don't know how you could possibly get confused, Brian.
very slow, very slow. Okay. Thank you for the clarification there, Ms. Count. So I will call for the vote, and I'll start. And I apologize. I know Ms. Count made the motion, and I'm sorry, Ms. Durkee, were you the one who seconded?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ms. Durkee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Count?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Item passes 5-0. And now we move to the next item, which is the AR, which is item 18.2. So we had, they're very intertwined, so we had conversation between both, but from an action standpoint, we are now on 18.2. Is there direction or a motion on this one?
Well, understanding Mrs. Mason's concern, because I don't want her to vote no against it, but I recognize that staff needs to move forward. I would move that the board adopt the AR with the following changes to be made by staff regarding the third priority, to remove the section that says this priority will apply only to schools located within the feeder pattern in which the employee's work location is situated, and this does not apply to Monty Gardens. Well, maybe you want to leave that in there. We didn't discuss that.
I think that was there before, right?
No.
It wasn't?
No. So I understood the third priority would, part of it would be modified to be inserted as a new sixth priority. And that was where the parents could apply to schools in a location situated close to their work. And then the staff would be adding language, including school feeder, split feeder patterns in the fifth priority.
So can I clarify, would the new employee one be before or after the those specialized programs like IB?
Well, our discussion said after the fifth priority. We didn't specify whether it would be after the sixth priority.
What are you suggesting?
We didn't discuss IB at all, so right now it was after the fifth priority. I don't think we've had.
Okay.
Well, no.
The sixth is two-way dual immersion as well. I would think that we would want to prioritize students who want to be in those programs getting into those schools to attend those programs. So I would say after the sixth.
So it would be create a new seventh priority. And then number 7 becomes the 8th priority.
And as a point of order, I just want to make sure, so as I'm reading it, I want to read what is, as I understand it, the current third priority. Student whose parent guardian is a district employee and works a minimum of 10 hours a week at the school of request or at another district site. This applies only to, I don't think that's the right one. Sorry, I'm trying to.
I think you just take off at the district or another district site, I think,
Right.
right? Just remove that. So you literally have to be working at that site where you want your child to go. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
That's how I had understood it, and so I'm reading it. And so before we say we're keeping that, I want to make sure that we have the current third priority reflect what isn't
right.
Students whose parent or guardian is a resident of the district and a district employee and works a minimum of hours of 10 hours a week at the requested or at their place of employment.
The former language says that they have to work 10 hours a week at the school of request.
That's the school of
You
request.
could
That's a
maintain
requesting,
that.
yeah.
Yes.
And as a point of clarification, in the new number 7 that you had mentioned, where it's the employee would be working within the feeder pattern, is it your intent to maintain the language does not apply to Monty Gardens, Sequoia Elementary, or Sequoia Middle, or to remove that language?
I think the entire board needs to discuss that because we didn't up to this point.
Mm-hmm. Those ones are tricky because Sequoia Elementary and Sequoia Middle are close to each other, so you could see the example of if you're nearby, but Monty Gardens is not nearby. So
Right.
would that actually help the employee to be near if they use
So-
that as the reason?
So was the reason that those schools were added is because they are open enrollment for the entire district?
Correct. And so this would interfere with that process if you took them off the list.
Took them off saying that they're not included though, right?
Right, so we
Yeah.
had added language that they were not part of the quote feeder
Right.
pattern
Right.
because they're not necessarily.
So the previous policy where it just said employees, the way that was being enacted in reality was they had priority at that level, but not at these schools because of their special enrollment situation.
In the 2008 model, it was limited to the school of employment, so it wasn't a factor. In previous models, that was when it led to some of the issues with the concerns about school sites. So that's why I just want to clarify that,
But if the school of employment is Monty Gardens,
then that would fall under number 3, priority number 3 still, but in number 7, there really would be no feeder pattern to Monty Gardens or Sequoia.
but if they were employed at Monty Gardens, then that would interfere with the open enrollment policy of Monty Gardens, because would
No,
they
that
get
would just-
priority before or after?
No, that would just be a number 3, that's fine. Where we get into issues is there isn't necessarily a feeder pattern with the exception of those 2 schools feeding into Sequoia, which is already addressed in the priority that's currently number 4.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, Ms. Aguili, are you feeling that the naming of those 3 schools in the new policy number 7, priority number 7, is important still?
I'm seeing a nod from Board Member Lawrence, and I'm certainly going to take my direction from the board on the nod. So yes.
I was nodding that you should feel free to give your opinion.
Okay.
I wasn't telling you what to say. I wanted you to feel free. You should say what you think.
It's my belief that the feeder pattern for Monty Gardens is Sequoia is outlined in 4, so it doesn't need to be permissible in 7 because it's already outlined.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, and then so for number 5, could we simplify this by just saying that we're going to use the language from the 2018 version?
The 2018 doesn't clarify that it's only from the
Split feeder. Yeah, she's adding that.
But it lists the, doesn't it
It
list all of
doesn't.
them? No.
Oh, it
Okay.
doesn't list. Yeah.
There's a simpler fix.
Yeah.
If we took that language and said cohorts moving from one school level to another within a split feeder pattern, or even kept the next sentence, a cohort is a group of students matriculating from one school level to another within a split feeder pattern. And then we can just take out the schools because you've just defined it.
Right.
The examples if you've defined it.
I like that because it's cleaner. And then if the board in 50 years from now ever redefines school boundaries, it would provide flexibility.
I recommend they don't take on intra-district transfers.
Right, yeah. Okay.
I'm fine with what we've stated so far.
So do we have one staff option or two staff options?
Two staff options. One in number 2 and one in the number 7.
You mean number 3?
Yes, 3.
3,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Would someone like to make a motion?
So moved. As the changes as we just discussed, so.
Okay, so I'm going to try and encapsulate those changes, which
Okay.
is to at least make sure that we are aware of what we're voting on. So the proposal is to keep priority number 3 as it currently is, which is that a district employee works a minimum of 10 hours a week at that school of request. So that item would remain as it currently is. We are creating a new, we are changing the 5th priority to simply, I believe the language is cohorts moving from one school level to another. A cohort is a group of students matriculating from one school level to another. It also includes various feeder patterns from elementary schools to middle schools. And so we are
No.
removing, okay? So
Not
this-
that sentence. I don't think you need that sentence.
Okay, so just the first 2 sentences. Cohorts moving from one school level to another. A cohort is a group of students matriculating from one school level to another
From a split feeder pattern.
Yeah.
on a split feeder pattern. And there are no examples. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
And then we are creating a new number 7, which would bump the current number 7 to number 8, which is all students who are residents of the district not described above. So a new number 7 after the IB or TWDI would be students whose parent or guardian is a resident of the district and a district employee and works a minimum of 10 hours a week at a district site. This applies only to regular employees. Priority criteria will only apply for the duration of the parent guardian's employment with the district. Is that correct?
So we're not saying closest feeder pattern or anything. We don't care where they go.
I thought the intent was for it to be the nearest feeder pattern. So the priority will apply only to schools located within the feeder pattern in which the employee's work location is situated.
Okay. I'm fine. I just want to make sure we're clear on what we are voting for. So it'd be
The whole point is to have them near to the employment location.
student whose parent guardian is a resident of the district and a district employee and works a minimum of 10 hours a week at a district site. This priority will only apply to schools located within the feeder pattern in which the employee's work location is situated. Sorry, I didn't read the green part. And as I understand it, we are not including the part about Monty Garden, Sequoia, and Sequoia Middle. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct, because it's covered above.
So the proposed priority 7 will be student whose parent guardian is a resident of the district and a district employee and works a minimum of 10 hours a week at a district site. This priority will only apply to schools located within the feeder pattern in which the employee's work location is situated. Period. This applies only to regular employees. Priority criteria will only apply for the duration of the parent guardian's employment with the district. That would become the new priority number 7.
I have to make a clarifying statement. If you don't include the language about Monty Gardens and
Right.
Elementary, the employees get priority over the general public into those school sites.
Okay, so I would suggest that we keep the language. That was my head nod earlier. So this priority will apply only to schools located within the feeder pattern in which the employee's work location is situated and does not apply to Monty Gardens, Sequoia Elementary, or Sequoia Middle Schools. This applies only to regular employees. Priority criteria will only apply for the duration of the parent guardian's employment with the district. Are we comfortable with that?
So you were saying if those schools, Monty Gardens, Sequoia, were not filled under number 4, then when we get to number 7, they could still be at play, in other words? Okay.
Number 4 accounts for matriculation, not initial entry at kindergarten.
So, Mr. Lawrence, I have one more question for clarification from staff.
Yes.
When you shortened the 3rd priority, and it ends with the sentence 1 ends with "at the school of request," do the final 2 sentences still need to be included in this policy, which would say this applies to only to regular employees and the priority criteria, just like it is in number 7?
Yes.
Okay. I would agree with that, but I'm just seeking clarification.
Are board members comfortable with that we're on the same page as to what's being approved here? And we'll certainly have this brought back with the language at our next meeting to make sure everyone can review. But and Dr. Aguilia and Dr. Clark, are you clear on the intent?
Yes.
So, and they also need to add the interdistrict transfer request phrase for each from 2 down. So it's clear that it's an interdistrict transfer. Because number 1 is not, they're all called priorities, but number 1 is not a transfer process. The rest are.
Yes, I have that in the notes.
Got that. Okay.
I am also interested in what Trustee Mayo was saying about providing transportation to students who have been victims of violence. So I understand that's a whole nother topic, but I just wanted to throw that out there that is an interest that I would like to see us explore in the future.
I call the question and all pending questions.
All right. So with that, everyone clear on what we are voting on? Okay. Ms. Mayo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Pound?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
No.
Okay, I vote yes. Motion passes 4-1. Thank you. And so we move along to item 18.3, which is review.
That is going to be Dr. John Rubio.
Okay. And so this is the review and potential approval of resolution 2021-27, reducing or discontinuing the number of classified employees on a reduction or discontinuance of a particular kind of service, PKS, for the 2020-21 school year. Dr. Rubio.
Good evening, everyone. This is an item that actually was supposed to come on to your attention July 13th. It was accidentally omitted in a paperwork error on the process when the paperwork came from the school site to HR. And so we wanted to make sure, this is the one error we caught where there was no backup to one of the layoffs that was communicated to the employee. And so we're following up to make sure we have the correct paperwork and what should have been in front of you on July 13th.
Okay, any questions?
So this doesn't have anything to do with the one I asked about earlier. It's just a coincidence. It's the exact same amount.
No, it does. It is related to that one because because the employee has seniority, they're entitled to another vacant position. So you're exactly correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? I'd look for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve Resolution 2021-27 to reduce the number of classified employees based on a reduction of a particular kind of service.
Second.
Okay, motion Ms. Durkee, second Ms. Mayo. Ms. Mayo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
I vote yes. Item passes 5-0. Thank you. We move to item 18.4, which is review and potential approval of the Aries Software Inc. contract revision for Parent Square messaging system. So I know we've got some background on this. So Dr. Clark.
Yep, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Gonzalez to present this item.
Thank you. We are looking to go with one of the Aries products. So Aries is our student information system right now. We're looking to expand our contract with them and move all of our messaging system from what we had with School Messenger over to one that they have called Parent Square. All the information is here in the item, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
My question would just be around, security concerns with both systems and why we feel more confident in Aries than in School Loop.
I think the biggest concern that we have is that we still don't have all of the situation with School Messenger resolved.
School Messenger site.
Yeah, we don't have all of that resolved at this point. And when we really took a look at the fact that Aries and Parent Square are really the same company, so it's not as if you would be contracting with a third company and have the ability to have those data breaches really taking place there. That when the executive cabinet took a look at this, what it had to offer, the fact that many of our school sites were letting us know that their teachers and their schools wanted to contract with other external companies. And then we took a look at the needs of the community that we've heard as far as translation and two-way communication. We felt that moving this direction really was a safer, more complete program to go with.
I have a question.
Ms. Mayo?
What is the savings by dropping School Messenger?
So we still have a contract with them, and I know that Mr. Alvarado is working on that contract now. So we would be expecting some level of a refund back from them.
Due to them being in breach.
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
So let me ask the question differently. What is the cost of the annual contract for them, with them?
With School Messenger?
Mm-hmm.
So typically it's anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000. They gave us a 1-year discount heading into this year because we did go back and ask for that from a number of the partners that we've been working with in technology. And they gave us a 1-year $20,000 or so discount. But we would expect that next year when it does come back, that it would be back in the range that it was at before, which is anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000. And I say a range because right. I don't entirely know what's happened with the contracts over the last few years. 1 year it'll be higher, the next year it'll do a bit of a drop, but usually it's between 50 and 70,000.
I really like the two-way translation feature. Hoping to have our school sites really test that out and see how well it works with the particular languages in our district. It was exciting to see that they they're charging us for a certain amount, but then also like free trial for a whole host of options. So it seems to me like that this is a good deal and a good way to try it out this year, and see if indeed those additional functions are things that school sites will like and will want to continue using the following year. So I'm excited about the possibilities, but I also like that it's kind of like a pilot. Let's try this year and see how it actually works on the ground at the school sites.
Other discussion or questions? Okay, with that, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the Aries software contract revision for Parent Square messaging system.
Second.
Motion, Ms. Cowan, second, Ms. Mayo. Ms. Mayo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Cowan?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
I vote yes. Item passes 5-0. And thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. We move along to 18.5. Review and potential approval of BP 0420.4 charter school authorization. So this was brought previously for information. Dr. Clark, or Mr. Alvarado?
Yep, I'm going to have Mr. Alvarado take these, the next 5 items.
Okay, Mr. Alvarado.
Thank you. Good evening, and to members of the board. I'll try to be brief on this issue. So the policies before you on the issue of charter school regulation, oversight, renewal, and revocation are intended to update our existing policies to reflect current law. They are based in large part on the California School Board Association's model policies. We have made some minor modifications, including incorporating changes by the board, suggested by the board at our first reading last week, specifically as to the administrative regulation on the issue of regulation, charter school regulation, which is also before the board today for information. I also note that we are attaching an exhibit to board policy 420.41 on charter school oversight. And this exhibit lists over 76 charter school requirements that are subject to oversight for any district authorized charter schools. What we have is essentially the full gamut of policies on the issue of charter school, basically bringing our policies to date when it comes to the law and as it stands currently. So with that, I turn over the proposed policies to the board for potential approval, and I can answer any questions by the board if there are any.
Okay. And just to clarify, Mr. Alvarado, is that the extent of it on this plus the next 4 items?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted, okay, great. Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. All of these policies were brought, as you indicated, before the board previously. The changes that have been made are very minor, very minor alterations. For the most part, they reflect the original policies that were brought before the board previously.
Okay, so we will start with this current one, 18.5. Board members, questions or comments on this particular item?
So I just wanted to ask that one of the things I brought up, and I don't know honestly whether it would make more sense to be in this one or the AR, but is somehow incorporating some language about our equity values and equity policy. And so I may have missed it, but were you able to figure out a way to put that in there? Or?
Yes, so as
Okay.
to the policy itself, the exhibit to the policy list a number of items, including issues related to equity. Those are requirements for the charter schools. And then as part of the administrative regulation, which is not before the board for approval, but it is before the board for information, those add additional language to it on the issue of equity, on the issue of non-discrimination policies. So those were added as you suggested, and they are before the board today.
Okay, I guess I didn't see it, but I'll keep looking. So.
I'm sorry. Yeah, did you just say you added it to the exhibit or to the AR?
So they already are part of the exhibit, and we added them to the AR, to the administrative regulation.
Can you say where? Can you point me to it? I obviously missed it.
On the administrative regulation, as part of, for example, of number 7, item number 7 of their requirements for new charter school petitions, there is a requirement, there's language there that says the charter school shall not discriminate against any students on the basis of disability, gender identity, gender expression, nationality, race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or any other characteristics listed in Education Code 220, including immigration status. And then as part of number 8, the charter school shall not discourage a student from enrolling or seeking to enroll in the charter school, nor encourage a student from disenrolling for any reason, including all of the protected categories. This is language that is taken directly from the requirements for charter school on the issue of non-discrimination. And that is the language that we added.
So I think that was there last time, right? Weren't they both there before? And it's, I mean, it's fine. I didn't offer a suggestion, so I'll take responsibility for that.
And on the administrative regulation, as we are, it is intended to be a living document, and we can update it as requested, and we can add additional language as well. That doesn't necessarily have to go into the policy, but can be part of either exhibit to the board policy, or it can be part of the administrative regulation.
Okay. Ms. Durkee or anyone else, would you like to offer a motion?
Yes, I can do that. Mr. President, I move the approval of Board Policy 0420.4, Charter School Authorization.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Durkee, second Ms. Mason. Ms. Mason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
I vote yes. Item passes. We move along to 18.6. Review and potential approval of board policy BP 0420.41, charter school oversight. Mr. Alvarado has given the presentation already. Do we have specific questions on this one? Okay, is there a motion?
Mr. President, I would move that the board approve board policy BP 0420.41, charter school oversight, as presented in item 18.6.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Mayo, second by Ms. Mason. Ms. Mason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
I vote yes. Item passes 5-0. We move to 18.7. Review and potential approval of board policy BP 0420.42, charter school renewal. Any questions or comments on this one? Okay, I would look for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the board approve board policy BP 0420.42, charter school renewal, as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion, Ms. Mayo, second, Ms. Mason. Ms. Mason, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Durkee?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
I vote yes. Item passes 5-0. We move along to 18.8. Review and potential approval of board policy BP 0420.43, charter school revocation. Questions or comments on this one? I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move we approve BP 0420.43, charter school revocation.
I'll second.
Okay, motion Ms. Cound, second Ms. Durkee. Ms. Durkee, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Cound?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Ms. Mason?
Yes.
I make it 5, passes 5-0. And we move to 18.9, review of revision to administrative response, AR 0420.4 charter school authorization. Questions or comments? A motion, perchance.
This is for info.
This is for information only. This item is an administrative regulation. If
I was on a roll, my apologies.
And Ms. Durkee, if you can forward some information, a particular language that you'd like to see, we can definitely add it as part of the administrative regulation. We'd be happy to do that.
Okay, all right.
And so we'll see this back on the 26th, I presume, Mr. Alvarado?
It doesn't need to come before the board again for information. This is an item that is not typically approved by the board. We will, however, incorporate the language suggested by Ms. Durkee or Ms. Cowan.
That works. Wonderful. With that, I see no other items. Any other questions or comments? Then with that, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.